started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Amy Moore. I am the Director of the Division of Cannabis Regulation at the Department of Health and Senior Services. I want to tell you all first that I'm very excited about today. This is our opportunity to begin our relationship with you. We're going to know you as long as you want to be here with us in this program. And we have a lot of people here who are looking forward today as well as an opportunity to make connections, to get started in understanding things the same way. Us, we want to understand what your plans are, what your hopes are, what your challenges are. And we want you all to understand the requirements that we all have to follow and how we view those so that we can start on the same page, we can build from there. So that's what today is about. And I hope you all find it valuable. We're going to cover a lot of information. Everything from, how did we all get here? How did this program start? Both, us as a team and you all, we all started in the same place. We started with the law that was passed. How did we start? Where are we going? How did we get there? Let's start our slideshow, please. Looks like I'm in charge of that. There we go. All right. So a couple logistics. Bathrooms, they're in the back. We've got some snacks out. We've got some drinks. We'll have lunch over here. If you need anything, find the table back here in the back. Those are probably our best tour directors. And as always, throughout the day, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. There will be some presentations where the presenter may ask you to hold that thought. We'll get back to it, but other times we'll try to answer your question right away. I have a couple introductions to do right now of our executive team. First, I want to tell you Tara McKinney is our Public Outreach Director. You'll probably have a lot of interactions with her. She leads our external communications. That can be conversations directly with licensees as she travels around the state and visits with you and visits with all of our licensees. It can be those direct conversations. You might find yourself reaching out to her. But then also we do things, she leads our efforts with podcast and newsletter. We try to cover all avenues of communication that we can these days. And I think it's so far, she's still pretty new in the life of the program, but right about a year. But she's developed so much in that time, and we're finding it really helpful with continuing this relationship, trying to understand each other better. Unfortunately, she's sick today. She sends her regrets. She really needs to be here to meet you all. Our Deputy Director, Andrea Balkenbush, she's been with us from the very beginning, helped to build this program, a lot on the compliance side, but really just the way we're structured now has a lot to do with her. She's retiring, so she's also not here. We will be sending her off with very sad farewells around the end of the year. And then we'll have a new Deputy Director, who that position's not filled yet, but stay tuned. We also have Leslie Turek. I'm going to ask her to join me. And then we have some others on our leadership team that I'm actually going to introduce in just a minute because they're going to be part of the presentations today. So Leslie is our Chief Equity Officer, the only mandated position in the law. So very important for you all as a group and us as a team. I'm going to let her talk for just a minute about her role.
Good morning. I'm really glad to see all of you. Some of you I've met before already. Some I haven't had a chance to meet yet, but I am the Chief Equity Officer. They call me the CEO. I sound very important. Probably not as important as I think I am sometimes. So I work directly with microbusiness licensees in a couple of different ways. First, I provide education as we're getting ready to open up another round of licensing. I don't know. Oh, now it's working again. I don't know what I'm doing. So I provide education to the public about what the eligibility criteria are and how someone could qualify for a microbusiness license in Missouri. On another hand, I also provide outreach to the microbusiness licensees. That's you. So outreach is not compliance. You can ask me all the compliance questions you want, and I'm going to go, I don't know, that's a really good question, but I can find out for you. I'm a resource for you. So I have actually put together those binders for you. I included rule for you to follow along. You're going to see a lot of rule citation today, and you're going to go, I don't know what that is. I don't know what they're talking about. It is available online on our website, but I thought, hey, I'm just going to give you an actual copy of it so that you can follow along today. We have pens, highlighters. You can highlight stuff that you think is really important. I also included a sheet with some important contact information. My number's in there. My email address is in there. You're welcome to contact me whenever you like. You're just like, hey Leslie, how are you doing today? I'm pretty good. I mean, we can have a conversation, or if you have a specific question you don't know who to talk to, call me and I'll get you to the right person. I've included your compliance officer as of now. That's always subject to change, but their contact information is in there. You're going to become very good friends with your compliance officer. They're very helpful. They know their stuff. They're willing to work with you. I also put in your business licensing services specialist. That was a big mouthful. BLS. They're also going to be a really good resource for you. These people are in Jeff City and they know everything that's going on in DCR, and they can get you to the right person if I can't get you there. Deal? All right, so outreach. I go and I do tours and visits along with Tara. We also provide education to licensees as well as the public. So I will tell you, I'm very proud to say that we have two wholesalers that are operational. That's a huge accomplishment within the first year. So I visited them both, super great people to work with. They're interested in networking. I know round one, all of those licensees are interested in networking. I know that there are lots of opportunities, virtual meetings, in-person meetings. If you can go to those, go. Meet the other licensees, get to know them, start building some relationships. That's really important for this program because you depend on each other. Okay, I think that's it for me right now. You're gonna see me throughout the day. Please stop me during breaks, talk to me, say hello. I probably know you by name because I've been through the licenses over and over and over and over and know lots of stuff, but I may not know you by sight. So please feel free to come up and shake my hand and ask me what's going on. But I'm going to be here throughout the day, and I'll be here towards the end and tell you a little bit more about our communications and resources that we have available to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay. So real quick, I'm going to run through your agenda. I know you have a copy. If you want to follow along. First, quick change. Since Tara's not here, we're covering part of her information now, and Leslie will cover part of her information later in the day where you see communication and resources. So after I wrap up, we're going to get into some compliance information with our section for Compliance and Enforcement Director, Missouri Rules and Regulations for that Compliance and Enforcement Group's Deputy Director, Section for Patient Application Services. Erica Ziegler, she's the director of that group. That's the group that initially processed your applications right up through lottery and to licensing. She'll talk a bit about what her group does and what services they offer. We will have a break, network opportunity. I want to say those opportunities, they may be the most valuable thing to you today. There's so much information in compliance compliance side. This is just the start of learning all those details and making sure that we understand things the same way with those requirements. But I would really encourage you in the networking times, find one of our staff, talk to them, see what they do, see if they can maybe connect you with the person that's assigned to your group. Do that during breaks, networking, lunch, after. Just would really encourage you to reach out to somebody, make some connections, start getting to know us. And to facilitate that, I'm going to ask all of our team members who are here today, if you would please stand up so we can eyeball you. If you're already standing, wave your arm. This is us. I think we may outnumber you. This is how valuable we find to this day. Okay, take a look around. These are your resources. Every one of them is here, ready, waiting, wanting to talk with you.
This is a lot.
You're up there too. It's your nose. All right, thank you. All right, so then after our first break, we'll hear from the Bureau of Business Licensing Services. As Leslie mentioned, you all probably have a name in your binder of someone that's been assigned to you for now. These are the folks that worked with you during the verification period. They will also be working with you throughout the life of the license, just like your compliance officer. After that, we'll have some lunch, then back to more compliance. Bureau of Facility Compliance. We've got 3 people to talk to you about their particular areas within that bureau. I think you'll have an idea by then, not only about our structure, but how it applies to you and what you need and what you will want throughout the life of your license. Another break, and we have some visitors from Metric who will be talking about one of those key fundamental mandated things that we all have to do, seat-to-sale tracking. Then you'll hear from Leslie, as you mentioned, about outreach and resources, and then a big question and answer session. So if for some reason we don't get to your questions during the presentations or you have more, we are wide open. It's almost an hour there. So whether we use that hour or not is entirely up to you. Keep a record of any questions that you want to throughout the day. They'll be available to you and give you as much information as we can. Okay. So real quick on DCR philosophy. What I'm going to share with you is basically what I've been saying since day one. So you're getting the same information that we gave to the very original medical marijuana licenses. Ultimately, it hasn't changed because we get our philosophy from the law. And while the law added a section 2 that opened the door to all of you, the values that we found in Article 14 have really remained the same. Those themes have continued throughout the law, even as it was medical got some tweaks during that last election when the amendment passed for adult use, and then we added this whole new section, but the philosophy is really the same. And so the program philosophy has been to look to that law for our values, to stick as closely as possible, trying to find the balance between what do we have to do and what does that mean, and not inserting our own judgment and values on top of that. We could look to a lot of other states, and we have learned from a lot of other states that went before us, and thankfully we weren't the first. We did get to see some of what worked and what didn't, and apply that here. But we didn't apply a whole world of things that other states are doing that weren't indicated in our law. So we go to the law first. Then we also have our rules. Rules are the direction, the practical application of that law. So we see the framework in the law, we see our values in the law. When I say values, I mean what should we care about when we're making any given decision? What should we care about? It tells us, for instance, throughout the law, especially in the purpose statements and in various places, that our program here in Missouri is very health and safety focused. That's not necessarily the case. Some other states have a very clear business and economic development theme. But that's in there a little bit in our law. But this health and safety focus, putting it with the Department of Health, telling us to consider in our rulemaking the public health, protection of children and minors, that's all there. So that's what I mean when I say we look there for our values. And when I say we look there for our rules, for making decisions. But I would suggest to you that this is also where you get your values for this program. If we're aligned in that, then I think we will be proceeding the next layer of our philosophy with proactive compliance. That's what we want to focus on, proactive compliance. We want to communicate, be on the same page about how we understand the law and the rules, make sure that we are finding any areas of miscommunication that we've done, any areas where we just haven't talked about it, maybe there's a different understanding. If we can all get on the same page about the requirements, then we don't have to get into enforcement, which is not where any of us want to be. You know, the law tells us some of the things that we're to do in cases of non-compliance, include fines, penalties, suspension, ultimately revocation. We don't want to get into any of that. And the way that we do that we have the best program we can have, and also don't spend any of our time and resources, ours or yours, on enforcement, is if we understand each other about what the requirements are. Today is going to be a lot of discussion about requirements, and that can feel pretty heavy sometimes, complicated. It can feel prescriptive. It can feel like you're being, shoved into a box. But what I want to ask that you think about is, while we have requirements that were given to us in the law, directions for those requirements that we have put into rule, there is still a world of innovation that we're not going to step into because the law didn't give us that responsibility. There's so much room for innovation, for really just business decisions that we understand is not our role. So we're going to stay in our lane, but in that lane we do take it very seriously. We want to make sure that we all understand it, and so that's one of the great things about today is we're going to start that conversation. Okay, real quick staff introductions. Next slide is the
check.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. So this is kind of, this is the rest of our staff introductions for today, but also you can see that it's going to follow some of our agenda as well. So starting in the bottom left. Section for Patient and Application Services, Erica Ziegler. I mentioned her earlier. She'll be joining us for a presentation at 10, I believe. Section for Compliance and Enforcement Leadership. Jennifer Zamkus is our director, Brittany Kirkweg, Section Deputy Director, and they're here. If you guys could stand up and wave a bit, they're here. Within the SCE group is the Bureau of Business Licensing Services. Sarah Birch is the manager. Sarah, where are you? Oh, she's up here. Also within SCE, Bureau of Facility Compliance, we have Dawn, King Forces Manager. Dawn is right there. SCE Program Development Unit. Lindsay, are you here? I haven't seen her this morning. Okay, not here. And then finally, we have our local friendly metric representative. Thaddeus, do you want to stand up and wave?
Oh.
Okay. See if I missed anybody. so. So the last key member of our leadership team, not here today, is Craig Schneiders. He's our operations unit manager. He is key to making our business run. I'm sure you all will have someone within your team who focuses on your operations. He is probably back in the office working hard on our budget because we are all entering our legislative session where we will spend a lot of time looking at our budget for the next year. All right, that is it from me, and so we are going to go to Jennifer Zamkus.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? As you get to know me, my staff, they all know I'm pretty quiet. So if at any point you all can't hear me, just wave at me and I'll know you're telling me to speak up. I can't hear from you. Most people in the division know me as Jen. I'm Jennifer Zamkus. I'm the director in the section for compliance and enforcement. As Amy said, we're the largest section in the Division of Cannabis Regulation. We're the section that you're probably going to have most contact with going forward now as you start opening up your operations. Our section is largely responsible for ensuring compliance with Article 14 and the rules 19 CSR 100. Leadership for our section includes myself, Jennifer Zamkus. Y'all are always welcome to call me Jen. Brittany Kirkwood. Brittany's going to talk with you here briefly about rules, which is also 19 CSR 100. You'll hear a lot of people refer to those as the rules. The section for compliance and enforcement, you often hear a lot of us refer to it as SCE. We're like any other industry, we like our acronyms, right? We have DCR, we have SCE. So within SCE, we have 3 bureaus and 1 unit. And I probably should move forward on my slide to give you that information. You've already worked closely with our Bureau of Business Licensing Services, Sarah Birch. Many of our staff are here today. BLS has worked closely with you on eligibility documents, minimum standards review, and they're going to talk with you a little bit more here later about business change requests, what to expect when you have business change requests, what kind of documents you'll need, what kind of information you'll need. I think all of our BLS specialists are here. Some are upstairs, correct? BLS, yes, some are upstairs and some are very back. I encourage you to talk with them, get to know your specialist on breaks. They're going to be a wonderful source of information for you as you move forward in commencement, as you move forward in any changes within your facility. We also have the Bureau of Facility Compliance, led by Don Kinghorst. You saw Don here. You'll have a lot of discussion with Don. He has 3 units within his bureau, the Facility Compliance Unit, Compliance Assessment Unit, and Testing and Research Unit. The Facility Compliance Unit is made up of the compliance officers, which are going to be your primary contacts going forward. I think Leslie put in your binders actually your assigned compliance officers. Some of them are here, some of them are not. But you're going to have a lot of contact with your compliance officers. They're kind of our frontline people to make sure that your facilities are in compliance and that you know the rules and understand what's required of you. A lot of their compliance efforts is done through inspections or education. They're also a great resource. You know, sometimes as you're reading through the rules, sometimes I read through the rules and I'm like, what does that say? What does that mean? These are the people you can call and say, what is this supposed to mean to me? How do I use this in my facility? How do I stay compliant? they're gonna let you know, and if they don't know, they're gonna find out that answer for you. Bruce Dooley over here, he is responsible for managing all of those compliance officers. And I probably should step back a little bit and say, one of the reasons I want to make sure you know who all these people are is we want to make sure that you have someone available. If you need a question answered, you're not getting a response on something, we want to make sure that you know we're available. Whether it's your compliance officer, your business licensing specialist, it's Bruce, it's Dawn, it's Brittany, it's myself. We're always going to be available for you all. We're available for all our licensees. So that's why we take the time to do this introduction, tell you what each of our sections do, so you know where to go, where to find that resource. The compliance assessment team, also a part of that Bureau of Facility Compliance, is made up of two groups. Product compliance team, which is the team under Justin Smith. Justin, where are you? Oh, right here in front of me. Wonderful. Justin and his team are responsible for making sure all of our labels are compliant. All of your packages are compliantly labeled. Identify all of the products that you're using correctly within rule. We also have the facility development team. Ashley Yancey, raise your hand. Ashley, this is the team you're going to talk to when you're starting commencement. Ashley's team will make sure that you know what documents to submit, and make sure if you haven't submitted those documents, she gets what she needs to help you with getting your facilities commenced. We also have the testing and research unit. We just appointed a new unit manager. Don, you've got to help me with his name. He hasn't started yet.
His first name is Brian.
Ryan. Okay, our new testing and research manager, Ryan, will be here December 1st. Okay. Testing and research are responsible for making sure that all our testing licensees are also complying with the rule. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement, our bureau manager position is currently open. So we have two supervisors who are currently managing that unit. Courtney Blomberg and Mitch Stossmeister. I think they're upstairs. Courtney and Mitch, there we go. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement, they're responsible for conducting investigations involving licensed facilities and individuals that are department-issued card holders. They take enforcement actions when appropriate. Also within BIE is our statewide track and trace unit led by Megan Bailey. Where's Megan?
I'm up here.
Oh, hi Megan. Megan is a wealth of information when it comes to Metric, which is also our statewide track and trace system. Megan's unit reviews industry trends, which also look to see if we have any compliance issues, and they also support the investigations and enforcement activities. So you'll talk to Megan a lot when it comes to inventories or anything that just doesn't look right in Metro. Our final unit is the program development unit. You've met Jason Brooks. Raise your hand. This unit is actually led by Lindsay Brooks. Jason's one of our supervisors, and he is supporting the unit's functions today for us. And he's done an outstanding job of setting up our PowerPoints, setting up our presentations. This unit also is the unit that works with us to make sure any guidance, communication to you all goes out in an effective manner, make sure we get everything updated on the website so that we have the most accurate information. I think that's everyone. I don't think I missed anyone within the section for compliance and enforcement. Don't forget, that's that SCE acronym. As you hear all of these acronyms, I want to make sure you know who SCE is, because you're going to work with this a lot. Make sure that you always feel comfortable to talk with any one of us that we met in this room. If you get out, you're not getting an answer on something, give Bruce a call, myself, Dawn, Brittany, we're all available. You're going to get used to seeing our emails as well, so you can email us anytime. As you're out on break, come meet us. We're going to come meet you. Our staff are going to get up and walk around the room and take this opportunity to meet you. We all have kind of that same goal, making sure that we stay compliant, make sure we have a safe product for Missouri citizens. So, with that, I think our next speaker is Brittany Kirkley.
Good morning. Thank you, Jen. All right, so I know that Amy spoke earlier about Article 14 and our rules, and I want to make sure that all of you know where to find them. In our first round microbusiness license, I asked everybody if they knew where the rules were. Lucky for you guys, Leslie took care of you and printed out all the rules in the binders. All right, so we're going to start with Article 14, and Amendment 2 passed in 2018. Amendment 3 passed in 2022, and that has adult use, and it also has the microbusiness licenses. This will be posted online, and so there is a link to Article 14, and as Amy said, this is the foundation of our rules and is what we look to for guidance and how we implement our program. And our rules, there is also a link here. You guys have them printed out. I would make sure that you keep your rules close. I always have a copy of my rules on me. Anytime somebody asks me a question, I always look to my rules. I used to know the rules backwards, forwards, but now we have new rules, a lot more rules, and different, they're located in different spots. They have microbusiness. They have a lot of different things in them. So always look to your rules. Always have your staff look at the rules, because that is how you maintain compliance. Here is a list of all of our rules, and I want to start with the definitions. So you all are micro-businesses, but you're also licensees. You also can be a cultivator, you could be a dispensary, you're a wholesaler, you're a manufacturer. So when you look at our rules, you have to read the definitions. You have to be familiar with those to know when you read them which rules are applicable to your license. So we have a lot of different rules. You went through the facility applications, facility ownership and employment, and now you're going to get into the training and the security and the packaging and labeling, the items that's going to help you work through commencement and then become operational. It is important also, when you look at the rules, that you look at the rules as a whole and not just read one line and say, yes, I'm compliant to do this. You have to make sure that when you're looking at certain rules, that you're looking at the whole rule together. And like Jen said, pick up the phone, call your compliance officer, call someone, and make sure that before you start something that you're compliant with it if you have any questions. And we did recently post, and it probably will be discussed through this presentation, but we posted a permitted activities guide, and that should help you kind of get some examples of compliance and how we look at the rules and what the expectations are for you guys as you start to operate. I apologize, this slide does not look right on this screen as it does with what we have in our PowerPoint, but I want to quickly talk about variances and waivers. And so we have Article 14, as we talked about, we have our rules, and our rules go through the rulemaking process. So every rule that we have, there is a reason that we have it, and it is important. But we also have written in our rules the ability to have a variance or have a waiver. So we have the ability as the department to vary or waive from, at its discretion, for good cause provisions of only our rules, on its own initiative or by request. So that means that we can waive a rule or grant a variance on our own, and that would generally be for a mass group of licensees, or if a licensee has a rule and they are supposed to comply with it, and they say, I can't comply in this way. So that they can request to vary or ask us to waive that rule. And with a variance, what we're looking at is that the licensee can still maintain compliance with the spirit of the rule. And so they are required to put a modification forward. So saying, we can't comply with how the rule is written, but here's something we can comply with, and we still feel like it meets that requirement. And so we will look at it and approve or deny that variance. And we also have what is required for the variance request. We have variance request online, and you will notice that at this point, our variance request form and some of our other forms have not been updated with the new rule language. There's a process for updating those forms, and we are working on those, but the current variance forms that we have are welcome to be submitted. One thing to talk about is that I did mention we can vary or waive our rules, but if it is a constitutional requirement, that is something that we do not have the ability to waive or vary from. Complaints. Want to make sure that everyone knows we do have a complaint form that licensees, we have complaint forms for licensees, complaint forms for department issued IDs, so agent IDs, patient, caregiver, but we just wanted to give this information. When we receive a complaint, then we follow up and determine if an inspection or investigation is needed into licensees or department issued card holders, but it's only entities that we have the authority to review. So we do get complaints on companies that are not under our authority, and we don't have that ability to review their complaints. All right, so my last slide is on guidance, and I know that Leslie will talk about this in our communication later, but we do regularly post guidance that is kind of impacts large groups of licensees, and that is on our website. And we send those out through our listserv and also through email to our licensees to let them know, here's something that we've posted, here's the PDF, and how to find it. So please always take a look at the information that is sent out from our development email address. And if you have questions that are specific to your license, always follow up with your compliance officer. Your compliance officer, your business license service specialist, they know your facility the best, and they are able to answer more detailed questions. A lot of the guidance that we post is kind of more higher level, and there's different situations for each licensee because all of you have different operations. And so we try to cover general information in our guidance, but it's always helpful to reach out to your compliance officer if you don't understand that guidance or want to know how it applies to your license. All right, that is all that I have for you today, but as Jen said, please, as you guys are starting to get your facilities operational, you're working through commencement inspections, make sure you have the rules handy. Make sure you're reaching out and asking those questions so you can be prepared for your commencement inspection. But then beyond that, make sure that when you start an operation that you know that it's compliant, and if you have concerns with it, always ask. So if you are a cultivator and you're doing something that is kind of maybe in a gray area, you need to ask that, because we want to discuss that with you instead of working through enforcement actions. We would rather talk about that up front. All right, Amy has something to add.
I add so much as emphasize. I really like the way Brittany talks about variances and waivers, and I wanted to emphasize a couple of things that she said, and draw back to what I was explaining as as well. So we are bound by Article 14 as much as you are. And then in addition to that, the way we get our rules is a statutory process. So the legislature said, government agencies, this is how you're going to come up with your rules. This is how you're going to get them approved. They go through a 6 to 8 month process where we file what we have put together for our rules. It goes through a public comment period where the public can tell us, how they think we should improve those rules or what challenges they would face with those, alternatives, things they didn't cover. We have to review every single one of those comments and address all of those comments, either by making a change or by saying why we're not making a change. Then it goes through a review of the legislative committee. Then it goes to the Secretary of State. Eventually, it actually ends up as a final rule. And the reason I mention that is because that's us following the law and setting these rules. It includes public feedback. It includes legislative review. It includes another government agency. So we take our authority to vary from or waive those rules very seriously. So when we say that option is there, it doesn't mean, this rule, I think it should have been different, or it's, gonna cause me a particular cost. We really have to take seriously the fact that these rules went through that statutorily mandated process with all of those other entities reviewing. I missed the small business board. There's a small business board that reviews for whether there would be undue burden on small businesses. So, we really have to stick to those rules, except in cases where there really is that good cause. Most of our variances have applied to everybody, where we said, okay, we see where that rule needs to be tweaked a little bit due to some circumstances that applies to everybody. Occasionally, someone will have a unique circumstance. And all of this, like I said, goes back to the fact that we are bound by Article 14 as much as you are. We are bound by the laws for rulemaking as much as anybody. So, when you do run into challenges, and I understand, talk to microbusinesses, our licensees, they communicate with us when there are requirements that are challenging or things that they wish were different. I would encourage you to just think about it. Is this something that was explicitly laid out in Article 14? Because we're not going to be able to change that. That would take another constitutional amendment if there's a very explicit requirement. Or is it something that we've interpreted in our rules? Those are the things that we can talk about, but also please understand that we have to keep in mind that the rules we have were passed through a very stringent process with public and legislative and other agency review. But there are cases, so if you have a challenge, feel free to ask, and we can help you identify whether it's constitutional or a rule-made requirement. Just something to keep in mind. In so many areas, we really are following the law that was passed without our input, just as much as it may have been without your input. This is what we have. We're going to do our best to follow it. But if there are unique circumstances and it's a rule-based requirement that you find challenging, absolutely talk to us. Okay?
Thank you. All right, I will have to add those details to my next round 3 because that is great information. So if I leave you with anything, please keep a copy of your rules, look at your rules, and look at the whole chapter when you are deciding if you need to do something different, if you have an action that's not compliant, because that is how we read the rules, is keeping the whole chapter in mind. All right, next is our Patient and Application Services Director, Erica.
Thank you, Brittany. First, make sure I know how to navigate these slides before I get started. Hey, good morning. I'm Erica Ziegler. I'm the Patient and Application Services Director. Glad to be here today. So our section serves DCR as the frontline team. We have a staff of approximately 25 individuals, and we're comprised of 2 units. We have our individual licensing unit, and then we also have our facility application services unit. our functions and responsibilities. So we serve DCR as a frontline team, and we have expertise in assisting applicants successfully submit their applications in our online registry system. So for our individual licensing unit, they handle processing of all individual card types, patients, caregivers, consumer cultivators, and then agent IDs as that pertains to our conversation here today. And then the IOU unit, they also serve as a frontline team responding to inquiries that we receive in our call center that's operational Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. So if you've ever called our 866 number, you've likely talked to one of those team members. And then our facility application services unit, those team members specialize in assisting facility applicants submit their application and promptly process those applications. So for you microbusiness licensees, those were the team members that actually did intake of the applications through lottery, taking those results, top drawn, and then processing those applications until they handed those applications following licensure off to the business licensing services. So then again, back to individual card types, agent IDs. Our individual licensing unit, they are going to be processing, they do process those agent ID cards. And then for our facility application services unit, they accept annual payments for facilities, so those will be something that's required in microbusiness licenses after your first year post-licensure. And then facility application services, they also handle the processing of renewals for licensees. So probably of most interest to you is agent ID. So the agent ID card, that is a card that is required of anyone that's going to work in some capacity for a licensed facility. So it's required of employees, contractors, owners, volunteers having access to a medical or marijuana facility. A lot of times we get questions like, what's the frequency? Like everybody that sets foot, what about a plumber that comes in or an HVAC person? Not necessarily. The rule requires this of individuals that are going to be working in some capacity or in the facility for a period of over 14 days in a calendar year. So that's just something to note. So if it's generally someone that's just going to be coming in to do some general plumbing work, may not be necessary. If you aren't sure though, it's always just a good idea to contact us and we can kind of answer those questions if you aren't sure if it would be someone that's required or not to have an agent ID. So, as you just heard about rules from Brittany, the rules for agent ID can be found in 19 CSR 100-1070. So that's going to have all the requirements for agent IDs, all the application requirements that those individuals are supposed to provide to the department in their at time of application. So when should they apply? They should apply any individual that is going to work for a facility, or if you're going to be in your facility, obviously, you should apply at the time that you request a commencement inspection. So we know that the rule requires that any individual that's going to work for a facility, that they are required to have an agent ID before they actually begin employment. And then let's talk about how they apply. So as with all other license and ID cards, we accept those applications and issue those cards through our online registry portal. You're familiar with that system. So the individual will create an account and then they will complete an application for an agent ID. And then the application requirements, actually, let's talk about how long the agent ID is valid. So agent IDs are valid for 3 years from the date of approval. So it has a 3-year renewal, and any active card holder will receive a notice of a renewal notification 60 days prior to it expiring. And then the fee for an agent ID card is $75. So when you submit the application and fill out all the requirements, you go to hit submit. It's going to ask you to provide a $75 fee. So the fee is paid at time of application. So let's go back to talk about some of the requirements for agent IDs. So in the application, the applicant has to fill out just general fields for their name, personal identifying information, and then they upload a written offer of employment from the facility. So they'll have to have something that says that they are going to work for one of our licensees. And then they need to provide a government-issued photo ID and also a digital photo. And then they're also required to provide fingerprint submissions for a state and federal criminal history background test. And then they have to attest to certain things. One of which is that they are a person that has a disqualifying felony offense, and also that their application is accurate and complete. So once it's submitted to us, then a member of our ILU staff will go in and review that application. We might reach back out to the applicant and ask for additional information, such as if they've uploaded something and we're unable to open it, or we just aren't sure, so we may give them a chance to make corrections to that application. And then, actually you can see up on the screen what an agent ID card looks like. And some of you may already actually have these cards, but it has an AGT number, which is the ID card number that's issued. It has the name of the individual, date of birth, the effective date, and the expiry date. So one thing that's relatively new is we have offered some opportunity and tools for licensees to do verification of an agent ID, which is really great because you want to make sure that those individuals have an active card if they're going to work for you. And even if it's someone, once you're operational, that someone comes to you and they want to work for you and they already have an ID card, then you can vet those at any time. So actually, let me go back to the slide. I don't think we have a link. I think that maybe the slides are circulated to you all, but all this information is available on our website. So we always encourage you to visit our website. We actually have a tile on the right in the drop down that says agent ID and has all that information. Anyway, so to verify, you can see that this is actually not a recent picture. So there is actually a feature on our cards now that is a QR code. And so all you have to do is scan that QR code. It's going to render a result that actually populates a picture of the record of the ID card, and you're going to be able to determine whether it's valid or not. So it's going to give you a result if there was any record at all whatsoever at any given time. So it's going to give you a result if it's an active record or if it's one that has expired. So you can use a QR code. The other thing that we have available on our website is actually a link to a website, a system website, where you can actually go in and type the ID number in, and it will do the same thing. It will render a result. So those tools are available to you. They're very, very easy to use, very user-friendly, and I don't work in compliance, but I know that this is something that licensees are required to make sure that their ID card holders are active. So it's something that you probably want to be familiar and be able to utilize. Okay, last, talked about fingerprint submissions. As you all are aware, we have a variance currently for that requirement. Due to the fact that we were waiting for the FBI's approval of our statutory authority to receive fingerprints for individuals who are subject to the disqualifying felony offense analysis. And if you ever hear us say DFO, that's what we're talking about, disqualifying felony offense. So currently, we do not require that for agent IDs, but we have been directed by statute. Again, we're waiting for the FBI's approval, and once we receive that, we fully expect to very quickly resume that requirement. Once we are resuming that requirement, ahead of that, we will post information to our website. So this will be something that once we resume this requirement, we will get an application. As soon as we receive the application, that individual licensing unit staff member who is processing that application will immediately send instructions out to that applicant that has a 4-digit code. That applicant, within 2 weeks, will have to go submit those fingerprints. So we're going to have more information on that. We really anticipate this to be coming sooner than later. So encourage you, all of you, to continue to check our website for more information about that requirement. So that is all I have, and can take any questions if anyone has anything, sir.
How long does it take you to issue those?
It's a pretty quick turnaround time, I would say. Right now, we do it, within probably a work week, 7 business days, and sometimes less than that. I will say, once we have the fingerprint requirement, just keep in mind, we will not be sending instructions until we receive an application. And it's gonna be very, very important that we don't have instructions circulating out in the facility. We just need those instructions to go directly to that individual. So we're really gonna be asking the help of our licensees to follow that process for us. So I say that because that's gonna delay the process. It's gonna extend, our current processing time frame. So I would anticipate looking at an average of about a 2-week turnaround time to process those cards. Any other questions? Yes, sir. We aren't quite sure yet. I mean, we have the authority to do retroactive and require that of agent IDs. And we probably have some responsibility to do that, but we really haven't quite gotten there yet. And as soon as we do, we will definitely post information to the website and make that available to everyone. Yes, sir. It applies to any individual that is required to have an agent ID. Well, right, I mean, a person that has a disqualifying felony offense is not allowed to work in a licensed facility. So at this point, once we resume that requirement, obviously that's something that we will vet ahead of time. We just haven't had the authority to do so, but that's something that we will be doing. And there is some information in the rule. There is a provision in the rule that also allows facilities to require criminal history background from those individuals, and you're welcome to look at that information. But once we do require fingerprints, then we'll be, the department will be vetting that information. Yes. Okay, license holders, if you are a license holder, if you're an owner, we'll call it an owner, and you're going to be working in your facility regular, more than 14 days annually, then you would be required to have an agent ID. Yeah, so anyone that's going to work in the facility, any individual, owner, manager, whomever, volunteer, they're going to be there, more than just that short amount of time, then yes, they're required to have an agent ID. Yes. Okay, I think, our suggestion is timing of applying for your agent ID is when you make a request for your commencement inspection, that's a good time to go ahead and get your agent ID, because you're requesting your commencement inspection, you're moving towards being operational, so that's kind of a suggested good time frame that you would go ahead and apply. No, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Not sure who's next, Leslie.
I think we're going to take a break.
Hello, everyone. I think this mic's going to work now. Can everybody hear me all right? But I'm not too loud, right? Okay, good deal. My name is Brianna Wardehausen. I am one of the team supervisors for business licenses, and I'm really happy to be here today and talk to you guys about our bureau and what we do and how that impacts all of you. So as Leslie said, we did just finish our minimum standards review. So all of you have been through that with us. You know what that entails, submitting all kinds of documents, and then we in turn go through all of those documents and review them. We're trying to make sure that all of these documents and everything that you've submitted is verified and that it's meeting the requirements. So the main purpose of business licensing services is not just the minimum standard review. We do still continue on with you guys once you have made it this far. So we have the verification process again, which is that verification of minimum standards. But then we also have change applications and licensee updates. So most likely at some point throughout the lifetime of your license, you are going to be updating something or making some sort of change. So anytime that that is done, you will be working with us and your business licensing specialist to ensure that everything is submitted properly and that we're all on the same page with that. So some of the things that we do with those updates would be anytime that you're changing your location, if you're changing ownership, or if you just simply need to update some information in the system. We will go through some more specific requirements on those change applications in just a moment. We do also do some enforcement, but as Amy has noted many times and everybody before me, we do not want to have to do enforcement. That is the last step. We want to try to work with you and ensure that everything is done properly, so that way we don't have to get to a point of enforcement and doing any kind of revocation or issuing any kind of fines. But if that time does come, we are responsible for some of those. So every year you are required to submit an annual fee. I believe all of you have already paid that probably on October 2nd or somewhere close to that. And it will be due at that time every single year. If you do not make your annual payments, we will reach out to you, try to remind you that that is due and you need to get those taken care of. It's not like the moment that you don't pay it, we issue that initial notice of violation. But if you fail to meet some of those requirements, that is something that our Bureau will handle. And we would be issuing an INOV for short and letting you know that you did not meet this requirement. It is a rule requirement or a constitutional requirement, and therefore you would need to get current with that, take care of all of that with remediation, and then pay the appropriate fine if it is applicable. Lastly is customer service. So again, you're going to hear it a lot today. We want you to go and meet the specialist. We're going to go over every business licensing specialist on the next slide. I'll give you an overview of our bureau. They are all here today. I don't think we have anyone that's out. So if you haven't had an opportunity thus far to at least put that face with the name that you've been talking to, please do that. So this is the overview of our bureau. Our bureau is quite large because, as everyone has said, we really want to get everything done for you. So our bureau manager is Sarah Birch. Sarah's actually standing right over here. I'm going to put her on the spot. She is the leader of our bureau, and everything flows from her down to all of us. We do work really great as a team, and we want to make sure that all of us are on the same page and doing everything the same for you. Under Sarah, we have 3 supervisors. We have Michelle Stanley, James Gaddis, and then myself. Again, I'm Brianna Wardehausen. We do have a very large team under us. We have 14 specialists overall. We do have a few vacancies at the moment, so hopefully we'll be getting those filled, and some of you may be seeing some new names. But for right now, we do have their full names on here, just to be quick, because you probably know them by first name. Under Michelle, we have Chris, Lori, and Ryan. So if you guys have not met them and you recognize that name from your minimum standards review, you'll want to get in touch with them. James's staff are Amanda, Darius, Katrina, and Brandy. And then my staff are Danielle, Maggie, Jeannie, Gabe, and Caleb. So again, make sure that you're reaching out to all of them. They are a good resource for you. If they don't know the answer, they're going to be able to point you in the right direction. But most of the time, they are probably the person you do need to speak with if it's concerning a change or anything of that nature. Each specialist is assigned to a facility. So they do have a caseload. They work with multiple facilities, licensees. So you are not the only licensee that they are working with. So do keep that in mind, but they do get to know you very well. They start to know you by name, they recognize your license numbers, and they want to know what's going on and help you and be a resource for you. Okay, now we're going to talk about business change applications. So Leslie printed out all the rules for you guys. So if you want to go ahead and open up your rule book, we are going to be specifically talking about 19 CSR 100-1.100 Section 2, okay? This is specifically for business change applications. DCR has responsibility to give prior approval and authorization for 4 specific types of change applications prior to you executing them. These are broken down in that rule, you'll notice, as A, B, C, and D. We are going to go through each one of these very specifically, and we'll talk about exactly what is required. So I do encourage you to mark this page. Depending on what you're requesting, you would be doing each of these types, but it would be beneficial for you to see what those requirements are in your rule. So the first one listed here is transfer a license to a different entity with the same ownership. So what that means is you're not changing your ownership, but your licensee is changing. So maybe you're just changing your name of your business, and then you would be keeping all of your ownership the same. So that is what A would be covering. Changes that result in an individual becoming an owner that was not an owner before. Now we're going to really hit on the word owner here, okay, and what an owner is. So we'll talk about that as well. Changes that result in a 50% or more overall change of ownership or financial and voting interest. And this also includes full asset transfers. So anytime that you are selling the entire license and all assets with it, that is a full asset transfer, and that would be covered under C. And then finally, we have a change to the licensee's facility or warehouse location. Obviously, anytime that you're going to be moving your location, we would need to know about that, okay? And again, all of these require prior approval. That means you cannot execute any of these without that written approval. If you do so, you would be subject to enforcement. All right, so if we're looking at A, this is the first one. Transfer the license to a different entity with the same ownership. This is probably one of the easier ones. Again, you're just changing your name. You're not changing any ownership in here. So what you have to do is submit all of your information through the online registry system. You can go right in there where your license is, and there are steps, and you submit everything in there just like you did with the application process. Now, sometimes these can get very large, and you may not be able to submit all the documents online. So if that's ever the case, just reach out to your specialist, and they can assist you with that. But what you're going to do whenever you submit these is submit a narrative description of your change. You want to know what exactly you are requesting of us. Let us know, I am changing my name from this to this. Nothing else is changing. As specific as you can be in that short time and give us a narrative of it, gives us an overall picture when we're looking at the documents. You would also need to provide your current legal and, if applicable, fictitious names, so any of those that you are currently using. We also need to know your proposed new legal and fictitious names, and then all owners and their percentages that they hold in financial and voting interest. And we also want to see that visual representation again. You guys had already submitted all that through your minimum standards and eligibility review. And the reason that we're asking for it again is because we're trying to ensure that there isn't an ownership change going on. Because if so, you would need to apply for a different type of change application. So whenever we're looking at that, we're verifying that it does support that same ownership. And then as with everything, there is a processing fee associated that does cover all of the time for us to review all of these documents and then give you a final answer. So that processing fee for this type of change is $1,000, and that is due at the time of submission. Any of these will not be accepted outside of the online registry system. So if you were to send it to your business specialist directly, they would end up rejecting it back and saying you need to do this through the online system. So in the example at the bottom here, we just show you Microbiz Inc. is going to Better Microbiz LLC. So that would be a transfer to a different entity with the same ownership. All they were doing was going from an incorporated to an LLC. So they could simply let us know in that in the narrative, send all the documents, pay the fee, and then we will review it. Okay, sorry. It does state in CSR what our timelines are. Keep in mind that those are upon receipt of a completed application. We do meet our deadlines very well. There are always external, situations that could happen, but we do try to always get these done as quickly as possible. All right, the second one is changes that result in an individual becoming an owner that was not an owner before. Okay, if you look in the definitions of your rules, there are a bunch of definitions of what everything means. This one's very important. What is an owner? An owner is not anyone that has financial or voting interest. An owner by definition is an individual or entity that has 10% or more financial or voting interest in that license, okay? So if someone holds 9.9%, they are not by definition an owner. They may be an interest holder, but again, not an owner. So when you are trying to make a change that results in an individual becoming an owner that was not before, what we would be looking at is possibly something like this one. John Smith, he currently has 9.9% financial and voting interest. So by definition, he's not an owner. We want to increase that to 14.9%. That puts him over that 10%, which means now he will by definition be an owner. So you submit your change application and you will let us know that. Now you cannot, again, execute that change until we have reviewed and approved the application. But what you're gonna submit whenever you go through the system, again, is a narrative. Let us know. John Smith already had financial and voting interest. We are now increasing that and making him an owner. And then you're going to give us additional supporting documents. All of your current and proposed owners. So we want to see everyone's current percentages and what they're going to. If it is more than one individual that is changing, that's a possibility as well. In this example, it's just the one. We would also need a visual representation of that proposed ownership structure. So that way we know if he was moving into a new spot, or maybe this is a whole new owner that never had any interest, where do they fit in the broad scheme of things? We would also need a chart comparing that current and proposed ownership, and verification that that change is not going to result in common control of a testing lab. So we look at all of that information and ensure that it's all meeting these rule requirements. You would also still need to submit that attestation that all of these individuals are subject to the background check for the disqualifying felony offense, and that you'll submit those fingerprints within 2 weeks. And if this change affects your eligibility, because as you know, as a microbusiness owner, you must have eligibility requirements. That was part of your minimum standards review. So if this change is affecting the new owner contributing to the majority, then that individual must also submit documentation verifying eligibility. Okay, so if they're going to be a majority owner, they need to also be an eligible owner. And then there is a processing fee of $2,500 for this one. As you can tell, there is a lot more that goes into that. A lot more review, and it does take a lot more time. So are there any questions on that one before we go forward?
I got a quick question on that last one.
Yeah.
You said it was $1,000. Our books are saying $2,000. Let me see.
It says what?
Go back a slide if you could. At the bottom there, you said it's $1,000 processing fee for transfer of license to a different entity.
With the same ownership.
Book, it says $2,000. I don't know, maybe it's went up since you printed this.
Where are you looking at in your book?
Under,
That's
Yeah,
because
page
microbusinesses owe half the amount for fees. So, right, exactly, so I'll give, so while the red does say 2,000, it's half the amount for microbusinesses. So that's what you're seeing.
Thank you for that. That's a good question. Yeah, so if anybody didn't hear that, his question was why the amounts weren't matching correctly, which is great. And Sarah just clarified all of that. So these are, they are calculated for the microbusinesses. Okay. C is going to be an overall change in ownership interest of 50% or more. So if you're making 50% or more, or if you are also doing a full asset transfer, this is going to fall under C. In these applications, an important thing to remember is they can only be made once you've received your approval to operate, excuse me. So until you receive that approval to operate, you cannot make this type of change. But you may make smaller incremental changes in the meantime that calculate up to the 50% threshold. So anytime that you are making those changes though, you do still need to keep track of them. Even though they may not be a change that you would have to submit for prior approval, once you do hit that 50% threshold, then you would need to submit that business change application. And at that time, we would also want to see any changes that you have made since your last approved change. So that is where you would still want to make sure that all that record keeping of any of those changes you made that didn't require the prior approval, that you still have all of those. And so once you have reached that point, you have to stop and cannot make that final change that goes above 50. So let's say that you're at 49%, and that's what you have made, and you want to make one more change. That final change is what would require that application to be submitted before you can fully execute it. So another thing to remember is prior to execution of any full asset transfer, the licensee and the transferee must submit the application. So it is not just the responsibility of the licensee at that point. They would be required to submit all of the required, which we'll cover in a minute, but the transferee will also be required as well. So this is what is required for these overall 50% or more or full asset transfers. Again, you'll see a lot of the same things. We want to see that narrative description. Let us know exactly what's going on. If it was like the example in the first, Microbiz Inc., maybe they are selling everything, full asset transfer to new Microbiz LLC. So if that's the case, just let us know that that is exactly what you're doing. And then you're also going to send us all of your current and proposed owners. So we would still want to see this is who currently owns everything, and under the new licensee, this is who their owners will be and their percentages. The chart that compares both of those, and a visual representation of that proposed ownership structure as well. Verification that it is not going to result in common control with the testing lab. As you'll see, that cannot happen at any type of change application. Attestation that all individuals are subject to that background check and will submit fingerprints within 2 weeks. And we also need documentation to demonstrate that they are eligible as new owners. Because with a full asset transfer, or again, whenever you are doing that 50% or more majority owner, they also must be eligible, just like all of you went through that eligibility requirement. So for full asset transfers, you do have to submit a few more things. They will have to submit everything that we just talked about, but we will also need your asset purchase agreement. Whatever purchase agreement that you have between the licensee and the transferee, we would need to see that. We would also need to see any type of merger, sale, transfer, memorandum of understanding, which is what an MOU is, or any other like agreement that may exist. So any agreement that you have entered into between you and whoever you're transferring that license to, we would need all of those agreements submitted. Also, if you have any brand management or consulting agreements or contracts that are associated, we would need to see all current and proposed agreements. So any that you may have or any that are proposed once this full asset transfer is approved. We also need to ensure that the location lease agreement is up to date. So if the location is not moving, but it is changing hands of ownership, then we need to see that the new landlord has that lease agreement with the new transferee. Or if they are moving, we would need to see that that new location is proper as well, and that could require a few more steps. So overall, there is a processing fee of $4,000 for this one. That is both for the licensee and the transferee. So again, the licensee submits everything, they pay the fee. The transferee will also submit everything and pay the fee. The only difference is that as the licensee, you're able to make all of these changes in COMPLEA, or in the online registry system. You submit everything online. Now again, sometimes with these documents, they can be very large and there may not be a place to submit them. So you can always work with your licensing specialist, send them via email what you can't send, or if they're too large to even send via email, we have some other options. But the transferee does not have access to that system. So therefore, they cannot go through the online registry system to submit their information. So they would have to submit it directly to the licensing specialist. And that's something that they would work with you on to ensure that that all gets submitted to the right spot. All right, and the last type of change that we have to cover today is just simply changing your location. So anytime that the facility or the warehouse location changes, we need to, and it must be pre-approved. You will, again, see that we want to know a narrative description. Where are you changing locations to? Or why are you changing? What's going on with this? We also need to see your proposed blueprints. Just like you did with your minimum standards and eligibility, we need to see the layout of that building. We do want to see your exit points. We want to see your restricted areas. We need to know your square footage, where your cameras are. All of those details must be submitted again for that new location. We also need documentation from the local authority because as you all are aware, some local authorities do have requirements that are different than ours. And they must be zoned properly. So we need to ensure that that new location that you're going to does meet all of those requirements. Typically, they'll send you an email, they may send you an official letter, and that is what you can use to send to us. And oftentimes, they will also include a link to their ordinances if they have one, or they will simply state that there is no zoning and they fall back on the state requirements. So, once you've submitted that, we will also look at the government facility and make sure that it is in that applicable zoning requirement. And then finally, your lease agreement or any of your proof of ownership. So anytime that, again, you're going to that new location, we want to make sure that you're approved to move into it. That if you don't own that property, that you do have the lease agreement in your name. And lastly, there is the processing fee of $2,500. And one final thing to remember with moving, anytime that you guys are changing locations and you do your commencement inspection, that is a really crucial time to communicate with both your compliance officer and your licensing specialist. Metric is tied to that if you are already operating, and we don't want to make any change in the system that would then show your inventory at a different location. So once you get that compliance inspection, we will not automatically go in and update your address yet. We will wait until you tell us this is the day I'm moving. So that way we can all work together and ensure that everything is seamless in that transfer. And another thing to remember is that you are not able to relocate outside of your congressional district. So whatever congressional district you were originally licensed in, you must stay within that congressional district if you do relocate. We do have application checklists on our website. They are a great resource, and you should be completing these and submitting them with your change applications. They are broken down by type, and there is a direct link up here, but anytime that you go to cannabis.mo.gov, that is the main landing page for DCR, and you can find the information from there. Or if you're unable to find it and having trouble, again, always reach out to your licensing specialist, and then they can certainly assist you with that. Business license updates that don't really require a change application. This is still very important. We use this online registry system as a means to reach out to you. So if your phone number changes or your email changes for your designated contact, we do not know that information unless you go in and update it. So it's very important that you keep that up to date. It is also a requirement that you keep that up to date. So whenever we try to reach out to someone, that is going to be our first source. So you are able to go in and request these updates through the online system. And anytime that you need help with that, we can certainly assist you as well. So a few things to remember about our change applications. They are evaluated upon receipt. If a change application is significantly incomplete, like perhaps you just submit your narrative and no supporting documents and you don't pay the fee, that will be rejected. If it is significantly incomplete, we cannot accept those sort of applications. So we do anticipate that you would submit when you are fully ready and you believe that you have all the documentation that is required. And that's what those checklists do. They're going to ensure that you at least have the minimum things that we are going to need to start with. Now, that's not to say that's all that we will need. Sometimes when we look at things, that does bring up more questions, and we may ask and request additional items. If they do reach out to you and request additional items, you will almost always get 7 days. We reach out to the designated contact, and again, we try to send those via email. We like to have things in writing, and you will be notified that this is a 7-day deadline. So anytime that you're requesting a change or waiting for some authorization, it's a good idea to really watch that email for your designated contact. If we're not able to reach you, we also will reach out by phone. If a deadline is passed, we do still try to reach out to you and let you know that on that 7 days. And if at some point you needed an extension, that's an option as well. If you let your specialist know that you're working on this and you still need a little bit of time, let them know before you reach the deadline. I understand sometimes you are at the very end and then you realize that it's not going to happen, and that's okay. You can request it on the last day, but you are strongly encouraged to do so ahead of time. We do process these change applications in the order received. Again, our specialists are working with multiple licensees around the state, and everybody is requesting things at all times. So we do have a large workload, but we do try to to process these as quickly as possible. And if we do request information, we will move on to the next individual and then jump back to yours and review in between. So just keep that in mind that that's not the only one that they are working on at that moment. But anytime that you want a status update, you can reach out to your specialist and you can ask them for that. If you ever anticipate an ownership change or any kind of change at all and you're unsure, it's always a good idea to talk to your specialist about it. You can reach out to them. It never hurts to just ask. Communication is really key at this point. And again, we want to make sure that you guys stay in compliance. We don't want you to get to an enforcement situation. So if you always ask and the answer is no, that you don't need to, that's much better than finding out later that you should have actually submitted something. So anytime that you need to, you can always let your specialist know what's going on, and then they can guide you of what you need to do beyond that. Okay, now switching over to operational. Everybody has an operational deadline of 2 years from the date of licensure. That is a requirement for CSR. So you will have 2 years to become operational since your license date. There are times through a variance or a waiver, as I believe it was Erica talked a little bit about the waivers and the variance process, but there is an option to do that. Now there must be good cause. So again, we are bound by the requirements that are listed there, so we cannot just grant any kind of waiver just because we want to. There are requirements that you do have to meet. So anytime that you are requesting these waivers or variants, they're not actually done through that online system at this time, maybe in the future. But for right now, you will fill out a special form. The link is at the bottom of the page. But you will fill out the form, and you will also let us know what exactly you are needing and why. So all of these approvals, we do look at those and we try to ensure again that they are meeting rule, and we want to know exactly what you are doing and why you can't meet that requirement. So anytime that you are submitting those, we want to know what you want your new due date to be. So if you can't meet your operational deadline, for example, you're going to say, I can't meet that deadline, but I can meet this one. We're not going to offer a new deadline because we don't know what your exact situation is. So you know better when you think you're going to be operational, so you would include all of that information. You would also include the variance request questionnaire and a payment processing fee of $100. In your description, this is very important. You must have good cause for extending that deadline. You also need to tell us what efforts you've taken thus far. So what have you done to really try to become operational? And then what roadblocks have you hit that have prevented it? That you know you're not going to meet that deadline. And then what's your plan now to meet the new deadline that you have just told us that you would like? How are you going to meet that and ensure that you will meet this new one? All of the documentation that supports your claims, if applicable. And then you would submit all of that to the department. It can go to our cannabis license at health.mo.gov. Or you can always work with your specialist and they can assist you with that as well. And then once that is submitted to us, it does go through the review process. Again, these are not automatically approved. So no variance is approved unless you have received written authorization from the department, okay? And so that will come again via email to that designated contact. Here's just a few more important reminders. And we have our website here for annual fees. Again, those annual fees are due every single year on the anniversary date of licensure. So most of you have already paid that fee already, paying it the same time every year thereafter. The licenses are good for 3 years. At the end of that 3-year period, unless there is some sort of litigation going on or you've had some violations or there's some sort of issues, those are generally approved without any problem. If you've been operating like normal and you submit everything that's required and pay your fees, those are typically processed very quickly. All right, also, you must comply with your state, local, and federal requirements. Now it's gonna give out on me at the end. All right, so again, these local requirements can differ from the state requirements. And we cannot always control that. We don't have that authority to tell them what their ordinances can be. Now, if you ever question it and if it's valid, you can certainly reach out to us and we'd be happy to verify. But make sure that you're also following those local requirements as well. Anytime that you have an information change, again, contact information, any of that, you need to be letting us know. It is your duty to keep us up to date with your information. And anytime you plan on changing your entity name, your fictitious name, anything like that, always reach out. Here are a few of those required notifications. Again, you have a duty to notify us of your up-to-date contact information. Another thing that I want to touch on as well is in the online registry system, you have an account holder. It's always a good idea to have 2 account holders. You never know if someone's going to be on vacation for quite some time, and maybe you need to go in and request a change. DCR will not give anybody account holder access, okay? So make sure that your owners have their account holder access, and then you always have at least 2 at each time. Your designated contact has a different account access than you guys do. And they should also make sure that their access is maintained at all times. You should also notify us in writing anytime that your mailing address, your phone number, email, that sort of thing changes. Again, a simple email. It doesn't have to be a letter sent by postal mail. You can send us an email and let us know who you are, your license name or your license number, and what you're doing and what's changing. There are some annual reporting requirements. So in addition to your annual fee, you do have to be reporting to us. So for marijuana facilities, because I don't think we have any medical in here today, all owners and their ownership percentages must be reported at least annually. So you will need to submit that information on an annual basis to us. Medical facility licenses, all entities that own any part of that licensed entity and their ownership percentages, they're also required to be submitted annually. You shall also notify the department within 5 days of any initiation or conclusion of a legal proceeding. So anytime that you have any litigation, it's always best to just err on the side of caution and let the department know. Again, communication is what's key here, so if you let us know what's going on, it can sometimes just head up a lot of issues. And then again, anytime that you are changing your entity name, fictitious name, or even your any changes at all, you should always just let us know about them, and then we can ensure that you don't have a statutory requirement to meet by submitting an application. We also have a listing on our website, and the link is here for all licensed facilities. So this list is updated monthly, and it is broken down by license type. So we have our cultivators, dispensaries, infused product manufacturers, and laboratories. And then we have microbusinesses. So they are broken out from the comprehensive. So we have our microbusiness dispensaries and our microbusiness wholesalers. And then we also have seed to sale and transportation facilities. So that contact information is going to be out on that website, and you can see a little snip of it there if you ever want to take a look at that. And finally, here is our contact information. Again, the generic email is the cannabislicense@health.mo.gov, and our phone number, and then our landing website. You all do have your specialist contact information in your binders already, but again, reach out to them. You should already have their contact email anytime that you guys have questions. Any questions? All right. Yes.
I did have a question, sort of a comment. So if the timeline of 2 years from the time you get your license until the time that you're able to stand your business up and get it running, if the spirit of that is to give us 2 years, I think a more generous or maybe a better timeline would be to start at the end of minimum standards, because a lot of us micro businesses, we haven't done anything up until minimum standards. We're waiting to find out if we got our license. So if you want to give us 2 years to start our license, that might be a more generous timeline.
That's a good suggestion. We'll keep that in mind anytime we're drafting our rules, because that is a requirement laid out in the rule right now. So it's not an internal processing, unfortunately, that we could quickly change, but that is a great suggestion. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
But they could discretionary.
They need to know if we have concerns. If we don't say it, they don't know.
Yes, that would be sufficient. We just want to ensure that you have that agreement with them. And then also, when we're looking at that, we're just ensuring that all of those minimum standards things cameras and all of that, but if you've ensured that your local requirements are met, that you're not near a school or anything like that, you can also, that typically, that's not going to be an issue with that location. Yeah, as far as the minimum standards review. Now, of course, once compliance comes in, you know, they let you know a lot more about the inside of your
That's
facility.
as long as you're
once
working,
you
as long as you're doing
pass on
something,
through
that's
the
fine.
minimum standards review.
Right.
Yeah. And if you ever have a change like that and you're unsure about it, or what you can do in the meantime, again, reach out to your specialist and you could say that. You know, I really want to make sure that this is right first, but I can get this agreement, would that suffice? And we can definitely double check. And even if they're not sure, they'll reach out, you know, if it's my staff, they'll reach out to me, and sometimes we go all the way up to Amy to make sure that everything's okay, because we, again, all want to be on the same page, ensure that we're doing it the same for all of you, because consistency is key for that. Any other questions? Yes.
What kind of processing time do you have for change of location?
So that is listed in the rule book. I don't have mine in front of me, but for change of location, is that?
I think we have a goal date internally of about 60 days for processing, but it is hugely dependent on if we're receiving good information at first for the licensees at that first submission. You have everything that the checklist requires and you pay that fee. And then if you're responsive to your specialist as they're reaching out for questions, then you guys have a lot of control over your own timelines in that respect. But those do location changes and transfers of same ownership tend to run a lot quicker timeline than like the big 50% or full asset transfers. Location change can be submitted anytime now, even now, right before you're operational. Those can be considered and we can go ahead and process and approve those changes. The only one that really requires you to be operational is that 50% rule and full asset transfer. We do not typically accept business change applications prior to completing minimum standards. We'll ask that you wait. However, if you have a business need, if there's something pressing, if you have a certain situation that calls for it, we're open to having those discussions, to have those submissions after that.
All right, any other questions? If you do think of anything, you can always stop one of us and we would be happy to help you, or again, you can always email us at any time and then we will get a response to you. Turn it back over to Jen.
Thank you, Brianna. She did an excellent job, and we're going to have another session for questions at the end. So as we finish up, that's not your only opportunity for questions. We are running early, and so to have best use of your time and maybe get you out of here a little early this afternoon, we're going to go on to our next presenter, Bruce Julie from the Bureau of Facility Compliance.
Hello, everybody. So I was initially expecting to be lulling you into a sleep after lunch with my dulcet tones as we get into the exciting world of compliance. So I do expect you all to be paying attention this time.
Darn.
You do not have that excuse now. So facility compliance, as I mentioned earlier, entails all the compliance officers. We have 32 compliance officers distributed across the state, plus a couple for testing and research. And so those are divided into 6 teams. So we have 6 supervisors and then 2 regional managers and then myself. So just a little bit of idea of the scope of our unit. So the purpose of this presentation is to review some of the common compliance issues we come across. Obviously for a lot of you, this is some stuff that's going to be a little ways down the road, but being knowledgeable of it ahead of time can help you as you are planning what your processes are going to look like. So this isn't a, it encompasses everything. we've just kind of found the most common compliance issues that we run into so that we can kind of bring it up, give you an opportunity to see what to be ready for. So the topics that we're going to cover is employee training, mandatory testing, inventory control and seat sale tracking, permitted activities, and required notifications. So for whenever we're coming into your facility for an inspection, and we're going to be looking at training documentation, what we're going to be looking for is that all training is going to be completed no later than 1 week after the employee begins working at the facility. Training records must be maintained for at least 5 years. And this information needs to be available to us when we ask for it. So it's something in mind to keep when you're developing your training program is what you're recording, where you're recording it, how are you going to be able to provide this information when we ask for it. And licensees must ensure that all facility employees, contractors, and volunteers are trained. It's something that I like to draw attention to is that it includes volunteers and contractors. And so that is ultimately the licensee's responsibility. If you have a contractor and they have responsibilities, but they aren't following through on their training responsibilities, ultimately, that still falls on the licensee. So these are the topics that all licensees should have training on. Prevention of diversion, inversion, theft, or loss of marijuana product, proper use of the statewide track and trace system, which this actually used to be mentioned in a previous version of this. It got slid in there twice. And I actually kind of like that because I would list it here twice. It is that important to have the people that are working at Metric trained on that system. Again, something that we run into a lot that can cause a lot of issues down the road is your track and trace system. And so having that training for your staff so they understand what the expectations are is especially important. We always have our metric experts, the people that are just especially good with understanding it. And even though we're all supposed to be proficient in our office, there's those people that are a little bit more proficient. You always want to identify those people and make use of them. Know who your metric experts are. Try to have that person that can help make sure that everyone's using it properly. So everyone needs to be trained on department rules and guidance. Anyone that's operating in your facility, obviously, they're beholden to rules and guidance, and so they should understand what those are. Safety and sanitation procedures of the facility, all processes and procedures used by the facility. If you have a process in your facility, there should be an SOP. They should be trained on it. And procedures for responding to an emergency. This can be tricky because knowing what kind of emergencies there could be out there. Just throwing out an example that recently came across. If there's flooding in your vault, what are you going to do with all your product? If that's the place where you store all your product, what's your plan for when you can't store it there? So again, just things to keep in mind while you're developing your facility, what you can account for in your training. Now, training and SOPs, again, it's something that I like to put a lot of emphasis on because if you do not have adequate training and SOPs, you will have errors, and that's where the less proactive side of compliance comes in, where we're now dealing with the issues and then possibly taking enforcement actions. And so whenever you can be proactive, it really pays off. When we come in for an inspection and you're going to ask to see your SOPs, see your training records, obviously you'll need to be able to provide them, and we'll make sure that you have it for each of the items listed. But we're checking that you have that documentation, and then we're moving on with our inspection. We're not necessarily telling you then, just because that we've checked off that you have the SOP, that it is adequate. That is ultimately the licensee's responsibility to make sure that the training and SOPs are adequate for their purposes and rule. And so we are a resource though. Like I said, we're not necessarily verifying, but ask what should this look like? Something that we sometimes see for an SOP is just the rule written out. say, yeah, we're covered, we have the rule here, everyone follows the rule. If that's not enough to actually give your staff enough information to follow through the process, like I said, there's going to be errors that are going to come up. Continuous repeated errors demonstrate a lack of compliance with training and SOP requirements. And so whenever you were to get an INOV, so just a heads up, if you were to get a notice of violation, one of the most common remediation steps is going to be asking for how you're updating your training and your SOPs to prevent this happening in the future. And again, when you're thinking about what a quality SOP, what quality training is, think ahead. What would prevent one of these errors from happening? And so, like, reach out to us for a resource. What issues do we commonly run into? Incorporate that into your SOPs.
Good tip.
And if this is new to you, one of the requirements in rule is to implement a quality management system, a QMS. And so that can be a great starting point for developing that quality standard operating procedures, quality training. It is, like I said, it's required that you implement a published standard. There's some examples given in rule. However, if you do have repeated violations in rule, we have the authority to require that you get a certification. So the rule only requires implementation, so you just have to have a published standard that you use. But then we can require certification at the licensee's cost. Again, if we are finding multiple violations, repeat violations. Some training is licensee specific. So for example, dispensaries have specific requirements regarding, since they're handling transactions. So purchase verification, age verification, product information. You're supposed to be a resource for consumers on the impact of your products, the expected time frames for the effect. So obviously the people that are handling those transactions should be knowledgeable about that so that they can provide that information to the consumer. For transportation, obviously handling confidential customer records and also age verification is part of that transaction. And even if for the transportation, that doesn't only apply to transportation licenses. If part of your operations includes transportation, then it still applies to your staff that have those duties. For security staff, the security manager and facility agents who provide security, including third-party contracted security, must have completed training in theft prevention, emergency response, appropriate use of force, protection of the crime scene, and control of access to protected areas of the facility. So again, when I was talking about how you're responsible for all staff, so that includes if the security contractor does not ensure that that training requirement is met by those contracted security staff, you are still responsible. We also see this with the waste destruction. Some people have used contracted waste disposal. They're facility agents, they're coming into your facility and they're performing some of your procedures, and so they still need to meet those same training requirements. And again, that is the licensee's responsibility. All right, so marijuana product that fails mandatory testing requirements is placed on administrative hold by the division. The administrative hold status prevents any activity with the product, including waste, sale, or transfer of the product until the hold is lifted. Here are the steps for that. DCR places all failed marijuana products on administrative hold. The licensee notifies the division of the intent to reanalyze, remediate, or destroy the product. DCR releases the administrative hold, and then the licensee completes its action that it informed DCR that it would take. So it's the licensee's responsibility to be monitoring metric in order to know when items are placed on hold. And this is where that gets really important. I really want to bring attention to the deadlines that are on this, because again, this is a very common issue that we run into. So all marijuana product that fails mandatory testing must be reanalyzed, remediated, or destroyed within 3 months of that initial test failure. So when that initial test failure occurs, that starts the clock, 3 months for those actions to be completed. The licensee must notify us within 15 days of the initial test failure before they take the action. So within 15 days, you have to notify us of what it is you're going to do, and then they're 3 months from the same starting point of that initial test failure to complete that action. So 15 days to notify, 3 months to complete the action.
Okay.
So all notifications need to include the metric package number and the date of the initial testing failure, and that should be sent to your compliance officer and also the cannabis compliance at health.mil.gov. And again, the 4 options, there's going to be reanalysis, destruction, remediation that's allowed by rule, and the remediation that's not specified in rule, which we'll get to. So for reanalysis, reanalysis of the original sample may be performed by the testing facility that performed the initial analysis, or a testing facility that did not perform the original analysis. It's performed of the original sample and only requires tests covering what failed in the mandatory testing. So it's not the full testing suite again, it's just for what it failed for. So if it passes reanalysis for that item, a new facility can take a new sample and run a full mandatory test on the new sample. And then if it passes the new test, they can then use that test. That test then goes on the label, so that the label needs to be updated for that testing result. And then if a harvest or process lot fails reanalysis, it can't be reanalyzed again, but it may be remediated once. For destruction, you need to notify DCR before destruction of the product, because again, it's on hold, and so we need to be able to release the hold in order for you to complete destruction. You can't take any action while it's on administrative hold. And so you have to provide us the date and time of the proposed destruction and the video camera names that will capture the 2 angles of destruction. So rule outlines 4 remediation processes that are allowed. And so if you are requesting one of those 4 methods, then you just need to provide us with the information of what the method is from a rule that you're going to be using. If it's not one of those 4, then you need to submit we have a request document on the website, we have a link here, and you complete that information, and you must receive written approval from the department before the remediation may be performed. We have to basically review those, make sure that it does still meet the expectations of rule, even though it's not listed as one of those already approved methods. And then if approved, we'll send you a written approval, and then you will be able to carry out that activity. So again, keep that in mind with those time frames for how long you have to give us the notice, and then how long you have until before the action needs to be taken. We do have a note here that marijuana product that fails mandatory testing for heavy metals cannot be remediated. It can either be destroyed or reanalyzed. That is a rule requirement, that products that fail for heavy metals cannot be remediated.
Good.
All right, so like I said, inventory control, seed to sale tracking, metric. It is one of the most common issues that we see common areas that we see issues with. And so having that training for your staff, understanding it, asking questions, it's a lot. Whenever we start with at DCR, it's, we have to learn this system and be proficient in it. So believe me, we can appreciate the challenge that's there, but it's extremely important. It's critical for our jobs, it's critical for yours. So it's the licensee's responsibility to understand what is in metric, regardless of any issues with the third-party point of sale system. There are point of sale systems that are available, and they can be great for those daily operations. But metric is it's the final record. It's where everything has to be correct. And so sometimes there's going to be discrepancies between those POS systems, as they're called, and metric. And so it is still the licensee's responsibility to know what's happening in metric and that the information in metric is accurate. If there's an issue in what's being displayed in the POS system, then you need to notify and understand that we need to make sure everything is correct in metric at the end of the day. So, licensees must record each day's inventory. Always keep in mind this last point, that metric inventory must mirror physical inventory at the end of each day. So the whole list: beginning inventory, harvest, acquisitions, sales, disbursements, remediations, disposals, transfers, deliveries, ending inventory. So what that means with the mirroring physical inventory, I'll give you an example. So we talked about administrative holds. When something is placed on administrative hold, what do you do with the product? So you should be placing it in quarantine. And so very often, we'll see licensees, they'll go in, they'll place the product that's on administrative hold in quarantine. In metric, it'll reflect that the product is in quarantine. What did you do with the actual physical product? Whenever we find that a product that was on administrative hold was sold to a consumer, very often they put it in quarantine in metric, but they left it in their regular inventory. They didn't physically move the product to where it was supposed to be. So that's two violations. One, you sold a product that was on administrative hold, but also it wasn't physically where it was actually in metric. And there's a reason for it. That is part of the reason is that if you had mirrored what it was in metric, then that would have helped prevent that product from being sold. So whenever it's one of those things where when you have that initial question of what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to record it, just keep in mind that it should be mirroring where it is in the facility with metric. So whatever the solution you're trying to find is, will it accurately represent what is happening in metric? Within inventory, transfers is another common area where we find issues. If the original licensee makes an error in the transfer and the receiving licensee accepts that transfer without catching the error, then the receiving licensee may still have liability for the violation because they did not properly verify the information that they had available. So it's just really important to understand everyone's responsibilities in a transfer. So the original licensee has to verify that the packages and manifest information is accurate before initiating the transfer. So they need to be double checking that. Like I said, this is where we have a lot of errors. The receiving licensee must then verify the packages and manifest information before accepting it. That includes if in between there's a transporter. So the transportation licensee needs to be making sure that what they are receiving is accurate. And then when it arrives at the final recipient, they need to be making sure that it's accurate. And so that the receiving licensee must then reject packages that do not match the information. So don't accept partial packages or anything. You need to reject the entire package if any of that information is not accurate. And we have a bulletin on about the transfer hub for how to enter this information and to verify it in Metric. So monthly inventory reports that reconcile the physical inventory with the inventory recorded in Metric must be submitted to the division. So it's just something to keep in mind is, since it is supposed to be reflecting your physical inventory, it kind of tells you how often you need to be, at the very least, making sure your physical inventory matches Metric. Because that, when we receive that report from you every month, the expectation is that this is part of a monthly physical audit of your inventory. Reduction in inventory due to suspected criminal activity by a facility agent must also be reported to the appropriate law enforcement agency. Errors involving consumer patient allotments must also be corrected. And then all these actions must be taken and reported to cannabis compliance and your compliance officer within 24 hours of being identified. So here's another one for you to write down as far as one of these hard deadlines. 24 hours, you need to report this information and complete the actions. All right, so permitted activities. In rule, it outlines what each licensee is allowed to do. Now, I'm not going to go through everything on the list explaining what you guys are allowed to do. Mostly going to focus on what that kind of means, some of the exceptions that are outlined there, and clarifications on that. So for cultivation activities, you can acquire and transfer product, seeds, clones from another cultivation facility. You can acquire and transfer marijuana seeds from entities not licensed under this chapter, if doing so does not violate state or federal law. We have a note here that we require licensees to record these seeds acquired from third parties in Metric upon entry into the licensee's facility. And you can acquire and transfer marijuana product from a manufacturing facility or dispensary. And of course, cultivate marijuana. So you can process, package, and store on or off-site marijuana product. This does not allow, so here's just a note on what is not allowed here then, is that you cannot produce infused products. You cannot package marijuana product directly for consumers or individual ID card holders. You can transfer marijuana product to or from your own warehouse storage facility, another cultivation facility, manufacturing, or dispensary. So one of the things to note with the warehouse or facilities that have them is that they can only transport between themselves and their warehouse. Warehouses can't be used as distribution hubs where everyone, you have maybe a few licenses that are working together, part of the same group. They can't have one warehouse where they all send product to it and then distribute from there. Warehouses are only for the purpose of a licensee storing their own product in their warehouse. So transportation can only happen between them and their warehouse, not them and another warehouse. And of course, they can transfer marijuana product to a testing facility. They can sell marijuana product to another cultivation, manufacturing facility, dispensary, or testing. It does not allow sales directly to consumers or individual ID card holders. Because obviously, dispensaries are the ones that are able to sell directly to consumers. So for manufacturers, they can acquire and transfer marijuana product from a cultivation facility, another manufacturer, or dispensary. They can process and store on or off-site marijuana product. So again, they can have their warehouse that they can store off-site. They can manufacture and package marijuana-infused products and pre-rolls, and so they're the only ones that have the ability to manufacture infused products. They can transfer marijuana product to or from its own warehouse, another manufacturing, cultivation, or dispensary facility, or a testing facility. And they can sell product to another manufacturing facility, cultivation, dispensary, or testing facility, but again, they cannot make sales directly to consumers or individual ID card holders. So for dispensaries, again, they can acquire it from cultivation facility. They can also acquire seeds, clones, and pre-rolls from cultivation. They can acquire and transfer marijuana product from a manufacturing facility or another dispensary. So these are the exceptions. They cannot acquire immature marijuana plants. That can then be purchased for a home cultivator. So they can only acquire them that are mature to then sell to home cultivators. They cannot acquire or transfer product that requires further processing. So they should only be receiving final products. So I advise you to be familiar with what a final product is, because that's where it factors into a lot of these permitted activities. And they cannot acquire or transfer product that is not past mandatory testing, except for ground unprocessed marijuana for creating their own pre-rolled seeds and immature marijuana plants clones. And again, that kind of goes along with it being a final product. If it's a final product, then it should have had testing at that final product stage. So they can create and sell pre-rolls, which does not include the grinding of marijuana for use in pre-rolls or manufacture of marijuana-infused products. They can package and store marijuana product and drug paraphernalia used to administer marijuana product. They can transport and sell or distribute marijuana product and paraphernalia to another dispensary, manufacturer, cultivation, testing, or an individual authorized to purchase marijuana product for personal medical use. And again, they can transfer to and from their own warehouse. So, like I was saying earlier, as microbusinesses, you are also beholden to the same rules, depending on what your operation is. But then, in addition to that, for a dispensary, microbusiness dispensaries can only acquire marijuana product from a microbusiness wholesale or another microbusiness dispensary. And then for microbusiness wholesales, they may only transfer its product to a testing facility, transportation facility, microbusiness facility, or to another microbusiness wholesale facility. So, kind of wrapping up those non-permitted activities. You'll notice that most of these non-permitted activities are related to licensees completing activities on behalf of another license, specifically with final marijuana product. A license producing a final marijuana product is responsible for its testing and packaging. One license cannot act as a production or transfer hub for another license for products that are already in final form before those final products have testing and packaging completed. So So, the reason why we have this, outlined in this, we have a guidance document over permitted activities, where I got, I pulled most of this information from. And so I would advise going and taking a look at that, because it's where we receive a lot of, it's the reason why we have a lot of our guidance documents is because that's where we receive a lot of questions about it. And so that's something that's worth understanding. We received lots of questions about being able to essentially use, a group of licenses by streamlining production efforts, by having, say one of you guys really gets your packaging process down. You don't necessarily need to have, multiple people doing that same packaging process, right? So let's, I have mine down, you can send to me, we can all just, you can use my system for that final packaging. So common question, but specifically, it is not allowed in rule for these permitted activities. So that's why we had to outline it here so that you'd be able to avoid non-compliance by having, because again, it has to do with each licensee being responsible for the final packaging, for their final product. And so that testing and that packaging that has to happen is the responsibility of the licensee that produces that final product. So no licensee is allowed to acquire or transfer final marijuana product that is not compliantly packaged and labeled. So again, that prevents multiple licensees from passing what should be final marijuana product before those actions have occurred. And no licensee is allowed to complete final marijuana product activities such as mandatory testing or packaging on final marijuana product cultivated or produced by another licensee. No licensee is allowed to transfer product to or from a warehouse that is not its own. What I explained earlier with how warehouses are able to be used to transfer product. So there was a lot that went into the permitted activities. Like I said, that's why we have a guidance out on it. It's a good example of something to talk to your compliance officer about if you have questions. It really goes into understanding the rule as a whole, like Brittany was talking about, and not just looking at individual items on what you're allowed to do, because you will miss a lot of that bigger picture of what is and isn't required by rule. So another common area for where we find issues is with notifications. There are required notifications outlined in rule. So as with each of these topics, you should consider how the requirements are reflected in your training and SOPs. So if any of these incidents occur, will you or your staff know what is required and the steps that are needed to complete it? So when one of these incidents occur, what actions are you going to take? Do you know? Will your staff know what to do? So licensees have a duty to keep the department appraised of certain information. Failure of the licensee to report required information to the department may result in administrative penalties, including a fine up to $10,000, suspension or revocation of the license. So here's a list of required notifications. So within 5 days of the initiation and conclusion of any legal proceedings, government investigations, or any other activity that would impair the licensee's ability to operate, we need to be notified. When a facility agent has been terminated for misconduct related to handling of marijuana product, within 24 hours following the occurrence of an event that affects the health and safety of the facility or its employees. So something to consider if, say you have an emergency that happens at your facility. It's some kind of leak or something that causes a risk to your staff. Not only do you have to address that, obviously, for your operation, you need to provide us notification. Within 24 hours of discovery of any theft or attempted theft of marijuana product, within 24 hours of discovery of any criminal misconduct of an employee, contractor, owner, or volunteer, prior to initiating a facility update that would be subject to 19 CSR 100-1.090, which is facility security requirements. So look at the security requirements and rules as far as camera angles, perimeter fencing. So if there is something that is going to impact your ability to meet those requirements, then that also requires a notification to the department. And so cultivation licensees also must notify the department before changing their cultivation practice. So say from indoor to outdoor or to a greenhouse, or by modifying the ratios of the cultivation practice it uses. The rule outlines what the ratios are that you're able to use. So if you're going to be changing that information, then you need to provide department notice. So for all of these notices, you need to, for it to be considered that you provided us that notice, you must email your assigned compliance officer, hopefully you guys are getting to know right now, and cannabiscompliance@health.mo.gov. All right. So that was facility compliance. Again, we are here to help you guys. We like to be proactive in order to get ahead of situations. And so please make use of your compliance officers. Ask them questions about what you're seeing here to plan ahead and be prepared. And of course, you can always reach out to myself.
Thanks, Bruce. Like I said before, Bruce is over all of your compliance officers that you'll be working with directly. Bruce has a management team underneath him that he works very closely with, Jasmine and Jamie. They're both here. Where are Jasmine and Jamie? Back there at that table. And then we also have several compliance team supervisors. I see at least one or two of them back there in the room. So you want to make sure that you get to know your regional managers, your compliance team supervisors, Bruce, because they're all part of that compliance team that you can reach out to.
Let's go ahead and get started. We are running early on the agenda. I know that doesn't disappoint any of you, right?
No.
That means we get out a little bit early too, right? We're all good with that. We're getting ready to hear from Ashley Yancey on commencement inspections. This is a great section, one of the first sections you're probably going to need to know about. So here we go.
Thanks, Jen. Can everybody hear me? I hope everybody got food. I want to thank real quick our support staff. They're great at feeding us along with 1,000 other things that they do. So I just want to say thank you really quickly to them because I'm sure everybody enjoyed the food if I did. So, like she said, I'm Ashley Yancey. They deserve an applause. So I am Ashley Yancey. I'm the facility development team supervisor. So what our team does is handle everything commencement inspections. We work really closely with the compliance team, compliance officers to get everybody through that process. So commencement inspections, or we call them CIs, are what is required by all licensees to become operational or to make any physical changes to your facility. So that process falls under the 19 CSR 100-1030 in rule, which I know we've heard a lot about today. Being told not to use the clicker. Okay, so commencement inspections. Looking at our rule, there's a few important factors that you should remember when you're going through the commencement inspection process. The first one being 19 CSR 100-1030-3A, and that basically states that all licensees must request and pass a commencement inspection before they can do the following. So, begin operation under a new license or new location, occupy any new space for which the licensee has not been previously approved to do so, share space with any other licensee, change the use of spaces, and then for microbusinesses specifically, if you're making changes within an existing space by adding a new process, cultivation, or manufacturing. So there's a couple other other rules that are important to remember as well. Those do also fall under 19 CSR 100-1030. First one being 3C. Licensees are responsible for ensuring the approved spaces are secured while the unapproved spaces are being constructed. And then 3D within that same rule, licensees may not commence any operations that are subject to commencement inspections until DCR issues written approval to do so. So there's a few different types of requests that you can make when it comes to commencement inspections. The first one is a new license or new location. Any request to commence a brand new license or change of location. Like they said with BLS, it's important to remember that you must get written approval from our business license services team before you can become operational or change your location. You must also be within 30 days of being physically ready to commence operations before you submit this request. There's new space. Any request to add a space outside your currently approved blueprint. This does include transportation vehicles. You have shared space. Again, any request to share space with another licensee. Change use. This is going to be any request to change the use of a previously commenced space. And then again, for microbusinesses, any request to add a process. So if you're becoming operational and you want to just do the cultivation side or the manufacturing side, it's important to remember before you use those processes on the other side of your license, you must request a commencement, and that's what that's going to be. So when you're ready to request a commencement, there's a process that we follow. You're going to submit our commencement inspection questionnaire along with your blueprint. It is important that your blueprint includes all of the following: the entire facility, including your premises, all rooms, clearly labeled, including purpose and square footage, camera locations, limited access areas, access permissions. You are going to submit all of that to that cannabis compliance at health.mo.gov. And then we are working on getting this questionnaire. I was going to click on it, but our click isn't working. So we are working on getting this questionnaire on the website. Until that time, you can reach out to myself, that compliance inbox. We can get you a copy of that so you know what's expected on that questionnaire, but it's not on the website at this time. Once you have submitted those, you will get, or the designated contact will get an email receipt letting them know that they can proceed with any construction that's needed and that we were going to be going forward in the process. Okay, so the next step is assigning the commencement inspection to our facility development team. So they will look through your checklist, or I'm sorry, look through your questionnaire. We have created these self-inspection checklists. Depending on the type of request that you're asking for, they will send out a checklist to you based on the type of request that you need. So we have new location, change of location, new license, change of location for different types of dispensary, manufacturer, cultivator. We have one form that's for change use, new space, shared space, and then one form, like I said, that's specific for that micro business wholesaler. So your facility specialist will reach out to you. All right, I'm not busy calling. We'll reach out to you with the checklist that is needed, and they will kind of keep with you in that next step of that process. These checklists also will be online at a certain time, but if you guys do want a copy of those, again, just reach out and we can get those to you.
$3 million building?
So I know Bruce had talked earlier about different requirements when it comes to documentation. I'm going to kind of go over those a little bit more. The big one for us is going to be those standard operating procedures, or SOPs is what we call them. Those must demonstrate that a licensee has a process in place for their staff to compliantly complete a process. Like he said, it's important to remember, us receiving those and you sending those does not mean that you comply with regulation. It is up to the licensee. It's your responsibility to ensure compliance with these rules and regulations. On top of that, you will also be responsible for ensuring compliance with applicable local, state, and federal requirements. Those can include construction permits, business license, occupancy permits, statewide track and trace or metric training. When we send you these checklists, all of this is going to be on there. So you're going to be able to see what's required for the type of request that you are needing, and it really outlines it well for you. So that way there's no concern, no worry, is this required, is it not? You're going to send it back to us and let us know if it's applicable or not. So I know everybody else has kind of introduced their team, so I want to do that as well. We have 3 people on our team that are facility specialists. They're up here, so if they would stand up. We have Alicia Smith, who is our St. Louis region. We have Andrea Smith, who is our Central region, and then Cody Stratman is not here today. He's over our Kansas City region. So if you are in a specific region, your commencement inspection comes in, it's going to go directly to them. They're a great resource. Reach out to them, talk to them. They're going to be able to help you through any process. They have these forms at your disposal. Any questions that you have, they're a great resource. They work really closely with their compliance officer as well. So they are in direct communication with them, and they both together as a team work through the process of the CO, or the CI. Okay, so once your documentation portion is done, they finalize your checklist, make sure everything is in order, they have everything that they need. The inspection is kind of the next step in the process. We have broken those down into 2 different categories. So we have virtual inspection and we have physical inspection. The type of inspection will depend on the type of request that you make, and it's dependent on the need that we see fit for that type of inspection. Virtual inspections are handled by your facility specialist. If we feel it needs a physical inspection, we will then pass it on to your CO, and they will work with you to let you know that it needs a physical inspection. So once you're through all of your physical changes, you receive that email from us, you let us know you're ready for inspection. We will let you know what type of inspection, and then we'll reach out and go through that process. Once your inspection is complete, it'll go through the process of review by our DCR staff. As long as you meet all the rules, regulations, and you're in compliance, you will receive a letter of approval to operate via email, letting you know you've passed your commencement and you can begin operations with whatever your change was that you requested. So I know that was a lot, and I went through it pretty quickly, but we kind of broke it down into sections just to make it a little easier for you guys. So the first thing you're going to remember is you submit your request, questionnaire, and blueprint to the email. Your commencement inspection is assigned to your facility specialist with your checklist. You fill that checklist out, make sure you have all your required documentation. It's reviewed by DCR. You make any physical changes that you need to your facility. We then do virtual or physical inspection, and then the licensee receives that CI approval if there are no outstanding issues. A few more general considerations. Again, just want to remind you, all of these requests need to go to that cannabiscompliance@health.mo.gov. It is important to CC your compliance officer so they know, but if you just send your compliance officer or facility specialist, say, hey, I need a CI, they're going to send it back to you and say, please send it to this email. It's very important that it goes there. DCR will confirm your request, so if you don't get a receipt back from us, please call us, email us, let us know, hey, I sent this in, could have been missed. It's just important to know you will receive a receipt email. Incomplete requests may be set aside, so if it is set aside, it is your responsibility to resubmit that and then have all the required documentation resubmitted. If additional information is requested, you guys must make sure you're getting that back to us in a timely manner. And then the licensee notifies DCR when physical changes are made, and again, you're ready for that inspection. Okay, lastly, after your inspection, the compliance officer will work with you to correct any outstanding compliance issues. So once you're past inspection, obviously they're a resource, they've been a resource for you guys all day. DCR will complete that review, and the CI will provide a written approval letter. Again, I want to state that it's important not to do any kind of operations on this request until you receive that approval letter. And then, if you have any outstanding issues that cannot be corrected within a reasonable time frame, you may be set aside. What that means is, we won't proceed with your request, you will not receive an approval to operate letter, you have to resubmit. We will require you to resubmit all of the documentation. We know that's a pain, but we have to have it categorized in that way. So just know that if it is set aside, you just have to resubmit it. Like I said earlier, we're working on getting all of this guidance posted on the website so you have it. We have not done that yet, but please reach out if you would like any of these forms. They're available to you, so you have them as a resource. And then if you guys have any questions, concerns, myself, my team, your CO, we're all great resources. We would be more than happy to help with this process. Any questions? We have Justin Smith, he's gonna talk about packaging and labeling.
Yep, I got my some, and every time I wore them,
All right, how's everybody doing? Can you hear me all right back there? Looks like it, okay. As Ashley said, my name is Justin Smith. I'm the Compliance Assessment Unit Manager, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about packaging and labeling, product compliance. Got a lot of names, typically I've been calling it packaging and labeling, so we'll go with that.
David.
Okay. So starting out, who's responsible for packaging and labeling of final products? The licensee who is creating the final product for sale is responsible for compliantly packaging and labeling that item. By that I mean they are responsible for submitting the item statewide track and trace system and submitting all the additional required documentation that is required with that submission. And we'll go over what constitutes a complete submission here in a little bit, but whoever is creating that item is ultimately responsible for that, for creating it and entering it and communicating with us if there are issues, being that point of contact to get these items to flow through our process. There is an exception to that rule, the exception being dispensaries offering pre-rolls or flour and custom amounts, commonly referred to as deli style. So for dispensaries offering those two, either pre-rolls or deli style, where they're getting bulk flour in from a cultivator and then either dispensing it or creating pre-rolls from that, that is something different. In that case, the dispensary would be responsible for the packaging, labeling, submission, and everything involved with that. So there is a slight distinction there. Not all dispensaries offer custom amounts, so if it is something that as a dispensary you're offering custom amounts, just be aware of that exception to the rule. Don't assume that the cultivator is going to be submitting these items on your behalf. If that's the case, you are responsible. Okay, so how did we get here? Item approval history. The item approval process, if you want to call it, started officially September 1st of 2023. On that date, a switch went off and any items that were to be offered for sale had to go through this process. The final packaging item category was turned on or created in metrics, so now for any item to be sold, offered for sale at dispensary, it has to be of the final packaging distinction. So the category type metric should say final packaging. Anyone involved any way in part of this process, if it is being offered for sale, it has to be a final packaging item type. So with that, when that was turned on, it required licensees to submit, like I said, into metric their item, including the product photo, packaging, label photos, and then further documentation just to verify compliance through our process. The item approval process is in place to ensure that products and packaging are designed in a manner that protect public health. So we're looking for warning labels, we're looking for the compliance label or label required by rule, which is going to list out all of that item information. The universal symbol, it's a big warning sign, red and white, so anyone who sees these products is going to know that's something that contains marijuana. You know, it's child sealed, it's got all the requirements in rule to make sure it's not getting into the wrong hands. Some of these products do look very similar to other commercial products. We have gummies, we have a whole bunch of edible products, and there are some where it's, this is a gummy and the kid might not know this versus a non-infused product. So making sure those labels and everything on there, seals, all that stuff we talked about, opaque packaging, it's very important. It is there to protect public safety, and that's why we're requiring these items to go through this review, submission, and review process. In working through this process, we have regularly taken feedback, made slight changes. Like I said, it is a new process, so we're learning the same way you guys are, and we're using this process, and hopefully it works well for everyone. You're able to get through. But as others have said today, we have our contact information in here, so get that. If you see me during break, grab a business card. If you have questions, like I said, we're here to help you. We want everyone to be successful in this process, so don't be afraid to ask questions. So these numbers were meant to be updated. Those are actually the numbers from giving this presentation last year, so I have some updated figures. So as of this morning, we had 283,771 items submitted since September of last year. We have reviewed 205,000 of those items, approved 177,309,000 items, and denied just about 28,000 items.
You have 10.
So with that, there are approximately 78,000 items still in line to be reviewed, which is kind of what we've been operating at. The rules say we have to have a review back to within 60 days, and aside from a few isolated incidents, our team is very good at doing that. We will have it back to you in 60 days, as this is a new process. As we got closer to our deadline, we saw a flood of submissions. So that stuff comes in, it kind of pushes our team back. We're working to get up and speed up these reviews as best we can, and as we continue this process, I see that's going to only continue to get shorter. Hopefully, we're developing efficiencies and that. But just be mindful. If we have everyone in here submits items, we have to look at all those items. So there are things that can back us up. We still stay within the 60 days, but if you submit something, just be aware it can take up to 60 days. So I don't want anyone submitting something banking on, they'll have it back to me in 30 days or 35. It can take up to 60. So if that item is not approved, you do not have items to dispense. So make sure you're thinking ahead. If you're not there yet, it's not a bad idea to start having these discussions, start lining things out to make sure you are prepared when you're ready to start creating final packaging items. So item approval overview. The item approval process is to ensure compliant packaging and labeling for final marijuana products. So prior to use, licensees submit items for review using the statewide track and trace system metric and a DCR email. So within the first 30 days of submission, we'll review the submission to make sure it is a complete submission. So with that, we're not reviewing every part of it, we're just making sure it's complete. If we're expecting to see you submit an application, the packaging photo, logo submissions, QR codes, everything that's on there, we have on our application. Here's how we're submitting it, here's what the file name is called for that additional, whatever it may be. So when we're reviewing, we want this to be easy, it all makes sense, if it's on the application and it's labeled a certain way, logo 1, we would expect that to be labeled the same way in the email. Whatever it is, logo 1, logo 2. So we can clearly connect the dots and see, okay, this is what they're submitting for this part of it, here's what they're doing to verify compliance with that part, and we don't have questions. So those questions, there's a little back and forth, we have to contact you, and if you don't answer, like someone else said, we'll just move on to the next item and keep it there and kind of be waiting for you to respond if that kind of response is necessary. But as I was saying, complete submission consists of all those things. And if you're not using 2 logos, you don't have to submit 2 logos. But if you decide to include 2 logos, you want to see those logos. If you decide to include a QR code to provide further information about the item, that's allowed. It's not mandatory, but it is allowed. We'd expect to see the visual representation of what that QR code is going to look like. So if the submission is incomplete, we will identify the reasons the submission is incomplete and email a denial notice. So within the first 30 days, you'll be contacted. If it's incomplete, we'll let you know. We'll say your submission is incomplete. It has been denied. We're missing X, Y, and Z. Submit again with the right documents, everything else that's required. So, as I said before, the time frame, 30 and 60 days, that starts once that item is created in Metric. So once you go through and add the required photos and the information for that item, your clock starts. So we have 60 days to review it from that point. And it should be in here, but once they're created, email all the documentation I was talking about to cannabisproductcompliance@health.mo.gov. It'll be on here. Just make sure everybody knows that. And this is used to show compliance with rules. So if you're trying to include something, make sure it's showing what you want it to show. If we want to see, here's the front of the package, and we want to see the word marijuana is big, and it's the biggest word on there, it's bigger than the logos. Make sure that's easy to view. Here's where our logo is. It's clearly defined. Here's marijuana. You can include measurements. A lot of people use a PDF form and include everything on there. So it's one nice, neat submission. It's got the complete dial line showing how the packaging will look. It's got broken out logos, QR code. Everything's identified. More information is better. It saves us from having those questions I talked about earlier. Okay, just continuing on. So after that first 3 days, we're going to review it to make sure now we know it's a complete submission, is it a compliance submission. So after sometime within 60 days, we will review it and verify that. Look at all aspects of it, make sure there's nothing that's violating rule, and everything that's required by rule is where it needs to be, is on the packaging. So if the item is approved, we will approve it, and then it will automatically get an item approval number through Metric. It says DCR will issue the approval number. So the second we hit approve, it's going to automatically change that item name in Metric. So if you had your item name, we hit approve, instantaneously you'll have an approval number before that item name. So it'll be M, a bunch of some zeros, a lot of numbers, it's 14 digits or somewhere around there, and then the item name. So just make sure you're aware of that change. If you're looking for the item in Metric, the name has changed. So we'll have that item approval number in front of the name, so just be aware of it and get used to looking for that. That's something important to verify. It does have that approval number. If you see something that has a final packaging category, but it doesn't have an item approval number, it has not been approved by our team. And it should not be used, sold, dispensed, any of that. Let's see. So, and if denied, if it's found non-compliant, we will email the licensee again. We'll email them. Your item was denied, and here's why. So we'll list out the list of deficiencies and send that to your designated contact. If there is a spot on our item approval application, that must be signed with every submission. That part lists a spot for whoever's filling that out. So if there's another person involved and they're filling this out and they're a registered agent with your license, we'll notify them as well. If they're the ones making all submissions for you and it's on the application, we'll let them know as well that your item's been denied and here's why. So, creation of new item and final packaging categories will cause automatic submission. After an item is created and approved, your licensee continues to use the item in Metric every time creating a package. So if this is a product you're using or that's in your catalog that you offer and it's something just you've offered year after year and it's not changing, you can continue to use this item. So once your item is approved, anytime you create a package of that particular product, you would assign it to this approved final packaging item in the system, and that would show the dispensary that it's going into approved final packaging that's got the labels, it's got everything required. It will allow you to make those transfers and those sales. But like I said, that item, once it's been approved, you can continue to use it indefinitely. The testing results would be assigned to that particular package, and it would have that final packaging approved item associated with it. So everything lines up. We can see it's in final packaging, it's been reviewed and approved. It's got the approval number, the compliance label, updated with all the accurate testing results, and that's putting out a product that consumers can look at and know it's legitimate, it is regulated, and here's all the information. Here's everything we need to know to safely use this product. Now we're going to talk about the different types of submissions. First one, pretty straightforward, is a non-template based item. This is a standalone item, singular, it's on its own. So that'll make a little more sense when I start talking about the other types of items, but this is an actual item to be used by a licensee, does not reference an approved template, and it's a standalone submission. It's its own thing. It's submitted, reviewed, approved, and good to go. And like I said, it's just for a singular item. The next type of submission is a template item. This is part of a process that seems pretty, I don't want to say popular, but used by a lot of licensees. It's an option, so this is one way to kind of work through our submission process. So this is not an actual item to be used. This is a template for a bunch of items to be based on. We still need to verify compliance the same way I said before, but think of it as just a blank shell for your actual items. So with this, the licensee would submit a template item which is labeled as such, so it's got the word template before the item name. That shows our team that this is a template, it's not an actual item, it's not template based, it is a template to be reviewed, and there's other advantages I'll get into in a little bit here. So with that, submit the item name, we would review it, and if everything was accurate and compliant, we would approve it, and once this item is approved, you can use that to build other template-based items off of it. So yeah, a template submission is a way for a licensee to submit a single design for review and apply that to multiple submissions once approved. Templates can be used for product, packaging, and label designs. They allow a licensee to quickly to obtain approval for newest products that only vary in flavor or strength. So that's the big part of this. Once you have your template approved, you can begin to submit template-based items. The reason these are more popular and more readily used is it allows licensee to submit in mass. So if you have a template approved for a 1 gram pre-roll, you can submit template-based items for that same 1 gram pre-roll that vary in either flavor or strength. So if you submit a template for just 1 gram pre-roll, then once that's approved, you can submit template-based items for 1 gram pre-roll Blue Dream, 1 gram pre-roll Maui Wowie, all the strains in your strain library, because each of those is required to be submitted. But with this process, we allow you to submit them all at one time. So if you go through and enter 150 1 gram pre-rolls into metric in one day, and they're all the same, they're going in the same package, the same label, the only difference is the flour inside the pre-roll is one strain versus another. This is what that's for. So once you've created all 150 different strains or whatever it is you want to submit in that one day or one time period, you would submit one application to us, and then one Excel or CSV list of all the items. And we just have licensee export that from metric. So once you're done creating and entering, you just export to Excel in through metric, and it will shoot you an Excel printout of all the items you've just entered. And we do ask that you group them, so we don't want a list with 1 gram and 2 gram pre-rolls. We want a list with 1 gram pre-rolls with one application, and then another application and list for your 2-gram pre-rolls. So they should be the only similarity, or the only thing that you can have varying between items in one submission would be that flavor or strain. So unit quantity, dose, things like that will require separate submissions, but for like gummies, another example, or edibles, where there's the same product but just different flavor variations, that is what this is for. So we'll review the template, look at the design, the packaging as a whole, and then you can mass submit. Here's all the different strains or flavors that we want to have in our metric system to use. We're going to submit them all through at once with one application versus having to do one application per item and one whole email of submissions. So with that, we're assuming, or you're attesting that everything on the items is the same. So we're still going to check that. We're going to do a review, but it's a slightly less intense review. We're comparing an approved item to a new item and making sure everything's highlighted, but it is a quicker review process. It does allow us to go through these items at a much quicker rate. The last type of submission is, again, for those dispensaries offering deli style. So this can be template-based or non-template-based. Just depends on your operation, how the flour is coming in, how much you get, how many different strains you're offering. There's a lot of variables, but it can be done either way. It can be a non-template-based item, and you can just submit for every strain, or have a template. In our system, it's approved, and then every time a strain comes in, you're just submitting the updated strains, pretty much. So just here's another set of 10 strains that we got coming in next month. We're going to submit those and get those into our library for deli style, or into our metric. So with this, for dispensaries that have multiple packaging sizes that are the same, we do allow one submission, and that is only for deli style. The thought is we're reviewing the packaging. We care about the product going into it. We want to see the packaging, but if it's a small Mylar bag for orders 0 to 3 grams, and then a big Mylar bag for that, but the design, the label, the warning labels, everything is the same. It's just scaled. We can see that through one submission. We'll just have you include a die line or visual representation of both sizes, including the specs or the size of this packaging. With that, if it was 2 separate styles of packaging, that would be 2 submissions. So if you have a glass jar and a Mylar bag, those are 2 separate submissions. We have to verify, can you see the labels on this? Can you see the labels on different styles of packaging? So it's not going to be one submission. Seems like most dispensaries have kind of shifted to, we're just going to carry bags, or we're just going to carry this, but you are able to do whatever suits your need. Just be aware that that is 2 separate submissions. Here is a kind of walkthrough of the process. Went over it a little bit, but just going through. So for template items and non-template based items, sorry about that. So new template item or non-template based item is create a metric. Starts your time frame. Starts 60 days. Once it's created, like I said, you go through and submit all the additional required documents. Template based, they're going to have a lot less. It's just the Excel sheet and the application, but depending on the type of application, submit all the required documents. Is it a complete submission? If no, like I said, we'll communicate within 30 days of submission why it was deemed incomplete and deny that item. If it is complete, it'll continue on to go under review. The rules say that all items must be reviewed by DCR for compliance prior to use. That's step 4. So again, is it a compliance submission? If no, it's denied or rejected back to licensee and they're made aware of the issue. So here's what's wrong with it. Here's all the areas it's not compliant and it's denied. Let's see. So if it is compliant though, the item's approved in metric and the item would receive an approval number, and then the licensee would be able to begin using that item to create packages with. So a little similar process, slightly different. For template-based items, new item created metric, the CSV of the associated items in the application. Like I said, emailed, you don't need the logos, the QR code, because we've already reviewed those with the template, so nothing of that is changing. The only thing that should change is the flavor or strain, so you don't have to resubmit QR codes, logos with template-based, just that list in the application. The items are compared and reviewed to verify compliance. So if the differences are only based on flavor or strain, there's no other areas of non-compliance, the item would be approved. If it's different or there are issues, or the template has all this, but you forget to put the universal symbol on that template-based item, we're going to deny it, or we're going to contact you and have you update or switch that. So compliant, approved. If it's not, we're going to contact you and let you know why. I hit on this earlier, but after licensee has received approval for a new template item, the licensee may begin submitting items based on that approved template. So you do need the template approved first. The application is going to require you to list the approval number for the template you're basing your template-based items on. But once you have that, you can continue to submit items based on that as long as you like. As long as that design doesn't change, you can continue to use that template for any future submissions if you like. And then one note I kind of mentioned before, but just make sure to submit all items that were submitted in one time frame. So if this is, you've got 1,000 variations of a product, and you go in and someone enters 150 every day for a week, we don't want to get a list of 1,000 items at the end of the week. It's harder for us to track those items down. So you've been submitting through this whole week, so have all the other licensees. So if you've got 1,000 per week, there's going to be hundreds of items in between each of your submissions. So that's why we ask for just 1 day's worth. If you have someone working and they're submitting, they create 200 items in a day and they're just flying through it, you can include all those in one list. But once it's broken out over multiple days, we just say at the end of the day, whenever they're done for that, just submit that list, and then the next day will be another application. It groups it by date. It makes it easier for us to find all the required documents, make sure everything was included in the submission, things like that. So just, like I said, make sure if it's over a week, separate those out by day. And here's kind of some details on how to submit. So after a licensee enters all approved template items for an approved template, like I said, you send the list to cannabisproductcompliance@health.mo.gov along with a completed and signed dated application. The licensee should submit the CSV file and item approval application with the following subject line. This helps us in finding these, organizing these. Like I said, we get thousands a day, and it's a lot to keep track of. So including your license number to start, just a quick way to organize it. Who submitted this? License number, approved template number, and then the item name as shown below. So they've got their license number, the approval number, and then the name there. Licensees are not required to submit unique labels when creating template-based items. So with that, I'm talking about the label required by rule, alliance label, the back label. If your template-based item shows that you have everything listed on the label in the order specified in rule, that same file can be submitted for all your template-based items. The idea is that the actual stats, the best of use by, testing, tag number, all that information is going to be generated when the items are actually produced and tested. So at the time that these items are being created, we're, like I said, 60 days out at times. So we expect placeholders for some of that information, and with that we would allow the same label file that's submitted with the template item to be submitted with the template-based item. All we're really looking at is the order of the information and the correct labeling of that information. But most of that is actually going to be placeholders, because you just want You won't know that at the time the items are being created. This is a question that we've been getting a little bit more recently, but just how to verify and accept products from another facility. The testing tag should be verified as well as the item name including approval number, and the item category will include final packaging. So, I think I have more details. Here's an example for metric, but the label on the item will include a testing tag, and it doesn't have to, but it may include a source tag along with other information. The manifest, when it's printed out, you're going to see the source tag, but you're not going to see the testing tag. And as I said, that source tag is optional. The testing tag is required. So we always advise licensees to feel confident in accepting it. Look at the testing tag, make sure that that matches what's on the product label. And look at the item name. It should have that item approval number before the name, like I said. And then the last thing is the item category. Should say final packaging. This one doesn't actually have inputted data because it was just pulled from a test site. But if you can see here at the top, I can't find that here. Number one, if you click on that and you have a package on your manifest, click on that arrow to drill down into it and see the packages inside the manifest that's being transferred. And then if you click on number 2, the arrow next to each individual package, and click on lab results, you can see the testing tag number without having to actually accept the manifest. So before that, to verify it, you can drill down and see that testing tag number, and then you should be able to verify the other approval number and item category on there. And lastly, I'm going to talk about labeling just a little bit here. So labeling requirements apply to containers, wrappers, packages, and methods of administration that contain marijuana product unless specified. The word marijuana is required to be clear and conspicuous, including at least as large as any other words used required on all layers of packaging. So it's got to be at least as large as any other words or logos used. It has to be on every layer of packaging, including the method of administration. So word marijuana, next. And a single line of text, clearly legible, visible. We're pretty open on fonts, but if it was something that was illegible, we would question that. It should be the biggest, it should be easy to see, easy to view. It should be very clear that what you're holding is a product that contains marijuana. Same with the universal symbol. It's got to be clear and conspicuous. Same requirements as the word marijuana on every layer of packaging, including the method of administration. The rules spell out what it consists of. So red and white font must be 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch for infused edibles. And for infused products, it must list the total milligrams of THC in the product. And like I said, clearly visible on every layer of packaging on the front of the package. We want to see that. We want consumers, patients are to see that. You know that's through the Missouri universal symbol for a product containing marijuana. And then finally, the compliance label. This is, it must display all the information outlined in rule in the order specified in rule. It should be consistent, so someone can pick up your item and pick up someone else's item and clearly read that label. It's going to be the same information in the same order, presented the same way. It'll lead to consumer education and better understanding of the products that they're using. So it should display only the information outlined in rule, and it is required on the marijuana product container closest to the product. So that's a little bit different than the other two. If it's a product that has multiple layers of packaging, it's required on the layer closest to the product itself. The rules do allow licensees to include it on other layers. If you're required to have it on the innermost layer of packaging, you could also put it on the outer layer if you wanted to include two, or some of those packages, containers get pretty small, so we do have some people that will put it on the container and then put a little bigger version on the outer packaging to help their patients and consumers. And this, I think it's the last slide, but this is just I think it's the second page of our item application. So here is a spot where you can request alternative label placement. So if you have a situation where you cannot include one of these labels, marijuana universal symbol or the label required by rule, you fill out this part of the application. You should still list why you cannot meet this requirement, how this will differ from rule, and how the alternative placement will still meet the intent of the rule. So we still need these products to clearly and visibly say, this is a marijuana product, it contains marijuana. So if you're filling this out, include, not just why you need to vary or alter the placement, but how you're going to still meet the intent of having safe, compliant label packaging out there. And yeah, that's it. So here's contact information. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. I'm Justin Smith, Aaron Burnett, team supervisor. She's here somewhere. Grab one of us during break if you want to talk about this or any other questions. And yeah, thank you all for your attention. I don't know who's next, but.
Phew. Oh, that's a lot of information, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. How about if we take a break? Give you some more time, do a little bit more networking. I've already talked to a few people who are like, oh, I really want to meet this person. Good luck, find each other. If you haven't had time to talk to your BLS specialist or your compliance officer, please take time to do that. I think we have Metric up next, and then me, and then question and answer, then we're kind of done for the day.
Well.
Oh, by fast, didn't it?
Yeah.
No, kind of, no, I don't know. All right, I'm gonna let Metric come up and talk about their system and kind of get you guys a little bit started, and then I'll come up with all of my fascinating information.
That sounds fast.
All right, perfect. Here you go.
This is only 30. Thank you, Leslie, and thanks to DCR for inviting us, and thank you all for joining. Really great to be meeting you all directly and being a part of your journey so early on in the process. I'm not shuffling back and forth to get to the clicker. But my name is Doris. I work primarily with Missouri's market.
So they're
Day-to-day, I work more closely with the DCR,
and so they basically they buy these with their
Matrix platform, and everything they need to support compliance in the industry.
What they do is
we also support the industry in ensuring that they are being compliant, so ensuring that their questions are answered when it comes to support. The system is working as
but that's how they're
it
doing their growth, the safe space.
So to take a step back a little bit, what is track and trace exactly? So track and trace is the process in Metric's case of using hardware. So for us, RFID tags and software, which is our actual website, to monitor goods through a supply chain. So we actually started out purely as a track and trace company, and we're trying to figure out the best way to put this technology to use. And as Colorado legalized their medical market in 2011, so the first market to open up in the United States, we actually partnered with them and realized that the software would work really well when it comes to regulating cannabis. So we've truly grown with the cannabis industry. We've grown with, as different markets have adopted us, we've grown our software to be adaptable and configurable to those different regulations. Today, most markets actually require track and trace, and we are by far the dominant company in the space. We have about 26 government contracts, so that's the most out of other seed to sale, or the most in the seed to sale space. To step back a little bit and go into how it actually works. So Metric creates, by tracking the activities, by tracking the RFID activity, Metric creates a centralized database that captures millions of data points across the cannabis industry. So whether that be in cultivation, manufacturing, testing, users go in and input the different data points, and from there, regulators can see the industry at full glance and have full transparency as to the supply chain. I want to emphasize that it really is seed to sale. So if a consumer were to purchase, for example, a package of gummies at a dispensary, someone with Metric access would then be able to backtrace, for example, exactly where those gummies were tested, exactly where the flower that went into that batch was grown, et cetera, et cetera. This is not only important for public health and regulatory benefits, being able to keep folks updated and actually being able to track things like recalls, et cetera. It's also really beneficial to businesses, so they can really understand their supply chain and how products behave from seed to sale. And this is just a more in-depth overview of what the cannabis life cycle looks like. So again, we capture over 300 data points from seed to sale. And it really creates a hub where the industry, regulators, as well as third-party integrators can have full visibility as to the supply chain and collaborate to ensure compliance. So, diving a little bit more into the actual functionality, each metric tag is fitted with an RFID chip, and that's essentially how we're able to marry physical movements to what's going on digitally in metric. So, for example, if a plant is harvested and then transported to a testing facility, or a sample from that harvest is transported to testing, all of that will be documented in metric by following the specific tag that was assigned to a plant when it was first planted. So in terms of best practices, definitely ensuring that tags are visible and remain in clear view. So for Missouri, we have 2 types of tags. Yellow tags are going to be for medical products, and blue tags for recreational products. So plants are going to be tagged at viable stage based on Missouri state regulation. Straps and tags are fastened to low branches, and tags should also be about 2 centimeters apart. So in terms of what would act as a limitation, say during an inspection, if a regulator comes through and they're attempting to read tags but having difficulty, we most often see this due to like a tag being either like too low in the plant, so the reader can't readily read it. If it's near like a huge fridge or a safe, that can sometimes affect readability. If it's behind like a cooler or just any type of liquid, that can affect readability. And again, just the placement of it is important too. So to step back and summarize it all, the metric system is highly configurable. So it's customizable to different markets depending on their regulations and whether, for example, they're medical or adult use only. It securely tracks, stores, and reports millions of data points that happen in the cannabis supply chain. And it also enables full product traceability from seed to sale to promote compliance. And I will go into some metric resources that are available to you all. So primarily, I want to highlight Missouri's partner page. So we have pages for each of our state partners. Here's the link to Missouri's. As a first step, I definitely would recommend just popping in there and giving it a quick browse through to learn a little bit more about the program and, you know, top level of the training information or training opportunities that are out there. I also want to specifically call out bulletins that we upload, so that's really the best way to stay on top of new features or new product releases that we have. When there's a new bulletin, there'll be a banner in the metric system, so that'll just be a flag / call to action for you to go into the partner page and check out what the bulletin is about and what the new change or update that we rolled out is. I also want to call out Metric Learn. So Metric Learn is our hub for learning, essentially. In the last year, we've really put in a lot of work to take in industry feedback and think about how we can make it more engaging. That was definitely probably the top 90% of feedback that we would get about Metric Learn. So with that, we've worked to make the advanced training a little bit more customized. So rather than it just being a general training that, say, a dispensary agent is taking and learning about cultivation, manufacturing, etc., we realized that it made sense to have it be more facility specific. So for example, if you're a dispensary agent taking advanced training, all the content there will be really specific to your day-to-day and really customized to what you'll actually be doing within Metric. And we definitely realize the importance of good training and what a difference it makes with the usability of the platform. So that's an area that we're really continuously improving, and I encourage you all to keep an eye on even after you're done with your initial rounds of training. I also want to call out Metric Expert. So this is a widget that we rolled out earlier this year within Metric's platform. And how it works is that it is an AI search tool that is preloaded with FAQs that are pulled from state regulations. So all the answers in there are Missouri specific, and we've worked with the DCR to ensure that they are pertinent and accurate. But essentially it just works like a search engine. You can populate your question, and within seconds, it will give you an answer, like I said, pulled from our state-specific knowledge base. And again, just another step to make our support a lot more accessible and faster. And then lastly, I want to call out our support portal, another enhancement that we added within the last year. Essentially, this allows for users, after opening a case, to actually go in and track where the case is in terms of resolution, and also just have documentation in terms of what our team said and be able to reference back to it as needed. And then just another summary of the resources that are available. Again, the live chat and online support is available via the portal. The QR code won't work yet if you're not credentialed in Metric. That kind of eases us into next steps. So if you're not yet credentialed, the DCR will work with you to get credentialing once it's time. And from there, you will not only have access to the Metric platform, but you'll also have access to Metric Learn and the support portal. I definitely recommend that you all take advantage of those resources as you onboard, especially the support team. They are truly, truly exceptional, and not just saying that. Most of them have been at Metric for years and years, and so not only are they great resources, but they really know and love the industry and are really invested and take pride in helping you all out and helping make the Metric experience better for industry and state users alike. So definitely please reach out there whenever, and on the customer success team, we're also really excited to meet y'all and grow with y'all, and please feel free to reach out there too. But again, thank you for joining in, and glad to meet y'all. Any questions before I pass this on to Leslie?
No.
Perfect. Thanks again, everyone.
I'm back. And I'm ready to party. Just kidding. All right, so outreach. That is me and Tara. Tara's not here because she's sick today. Aw. Can we all give her a little, aw, poor Tara. She was really disappointed because she's like, I miss all the good stuff. And I'm like, I do not. So I'm here to just let you know what we do in outreach. I'm going to say it again. We are not compliance. We're the fun group. We get to go out and do all the tours, and we don't have to like shake our fingers at anybody, or we just go, ooh, that's cool. And then we go and see something else, and ooh, that's just as cool. So I'm looking at it here, and everybody looks really zoned out. Like, how many of you feeling like, oh, that was a lot of information. What have I gotten myself into? Oh, geez, oh golly, I don't know if this is the right thing for me. I'm telling you it's the right thing. You won the lottery, the microbusiness lottery, but you won it. Like, that's pretty amazing, I think. Maybe you should go play the regular lottery as well. You never know. You might get lucky twice, who knows. So I know there's a lot of work ahead of you. I know it feels very overwhelming at times, and we're just throwing rule at you, and over, and you're like, I don't know what that is. Stop saying those letters and numbers. I don't know any of that. You're gonna get there, I promise. Give yourselves a little pat on the back for at least winning the microbusiness license. That's awesome.
Yay.
But now the real work has to get started, right? There's a lot of stuff to do. So, outreach. Tara and I work really hard to give you as many communication and resources available to you as possible. If you have not yet been on the website, cannabis.mo.gov, I suggest go and look at it. It can be slightly hard to navigate at times, slightly. The more you're on it, the more you're gonna know where things are. There is a microbusiness page on the website. It's really about eligibility. I don't know how helpful it's gonna be to you at this point, but there's lots of information about facilities on there. So one of the things I wanna make sure that I point out, because I said this to somebody from the first round at another meeting, and she thought I had lost my mind. So there is a facilities communication and guidance page. Am I saying that right? I think that's right. There's a guidance page. That also applies to you. You don't get to get out of all of that stuff. So I would go and read the guidance page. There's lots of stuff on there. And again, I said that to somebody first round, and they were like, what? I read the whole microbusiness page. And I'm like, and that's, you gotta read the guidance part of it, because that's for facilities, and now you're a facility licensee, and you're responsible for all of the stuff that goes with it. So I highly encourage you to get on that website and look around a little bit. The other thing I want to point out on that website is there is a page called Data and Reports. Fantastic, wonderful, amazing, if you're interested in data. That is not, oh, your hand's up, good. That is not, I mean, I do like data, but I don't always understand it. So we have this great data dashboard that our program development unit works on, and you can see lots of information about lots of different things. I know somebody asked about business change applications, like how long does it take to make a location change? There's data on there that shows you the average number of days it takes over the last 2 years. It's gotten better because we hired more people, so that's great. Poor Justin's team, packaging and labeling, oh, your numbers look real scary on there, but it's because there's so many, right? Packaging and labeling things that have to be done. So don't be scared. It's fine. We're working through it, and you can see like DCR's really worked hard over the last 2-3 years to really get things moving forward. So check out the website. There's also a place on there called DCR Communication and Resource Center. There you're going to find all of the stuff that Tara and I do. We do a quarterly newsletter. All things DCR. You're gonna see like some of the people that work at DCR. You're gonna go, wow, fantastic, how great. You're gonna see questions from compliance officers that they answer, some from BLS specialists that they answer, like common questions. Lots of information there. We also are so cool that we have a podcast. What? That's so great. It's called DCR Out Loud. I am not one of the hosts. Hooray! So you don't have to listen to me. Tara's a host, and Amy is a sometimes host, and Shayna, who has an incredible radio voice. I told her she should do audiobooks. You're gonna listen to it and go, wow, it's like, oh, you're transfixed on her voice. We have lots of interesting people. I was one of them on there at one time, but that talk about the different things that are happening within the industry, as well as some education pieces. We also have an email subscription, so I'm going to push this one. It is available to anybody in your facility that wants to have regular updates. It's not necessarily just for microbusiness. There are different categories. It is a .gov delivery system, and so we send lots of things through there, including our press releases that we send out. You can go on there and you can sign up for lots of different things. I was bored one day and I went in and signed up for the governor's one. I don't know, sometimes he sends out crazy stuff, so I'm like, oh, look at that, the governor sent me something, like I'm important, but it's not really, it's just part of the email subscription. But we tell everybody, once you have employees and you have facility agents working with you and all this stuff is going, encourage them to sign up because they're going to want to know what's going on in the industry. All right, so that's that part.
And they're just going to keep using their soil, and then they send.
Tara and I get a lot of emails and phone calls.
And they tell them what they need to add.
And a lot of those are questions that I can't answer, but I'm going to help you find the answer. We get a lot of suggestions, sometimes super good, and sometimes I'm like, thank you, I don't know what that means. And then we get a lot of complaints. That's fine. That's fine. I understand complaints. We all have complaints, and we'll do our best to rectify those with you. We also want to know this. Tell us good things that are happening. If you're like, oh, I got this wonderful employee and blah, 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 I don't know. Share it with us. Like, we want to share good news in the industry, especially with the microbusiness program. There are a limited number of you guys, right? You need to know what's going on in your own community. So share something good. We're more than happy to hear that. I'm happy to answer the phone and listen to complaints too. But I'd rather hear something good. But just saying. All right, for me, what am I going to do for microbusiness? I don't know. There's so much to do, isn't there? My number one thing is education. So a lot of you don't know me, that's fine. I used to be a teacher. Can you tell? I was a middle school teacher. I have the humor of a middle schooler. So I'm trying to keep it down here today. But my thing is education. You guys need to know what's happening and what the next steps are. So I've been working really closely with compliance and with some BLS and with some other people in our division so that we can get you the right education. What's going to work for you right now? So, in the next week, I've been holding on to this one. You're gonna get a survey from me. I want your input. If you're like, what? I don't want to know about investments, Leslie. I could care less. Then don't mark that one. I think that's a big one that everybody really wants to know about, or I don't really want to know about taxes. I don't care about that. Then don't mark that one. But there's a whole bunch of choices, and then you have options to like, give me suggestions. What do we need to know about? I'm not in your shoes. So I need to hear from you, like, what kind of educational things do you need? I also would like to really start a speaker series. There are some amazing people who have a lot of knowledge about the cannabis space. And I would like to share that information with you. Do I want you to have to go to another meeting? Not necessarily. But I'm thinking if I could put together a speaker series and you can access it when you have time and get some information, that would be really helpful. First round, really wanted to have a logo. I'm going to say that's in the works. I don't know how we're feeling about logos anymore. But their thought was it would distinguish us, right? People would look and go, that's a microbusiness. That's a Missouri microbusiness. It's in the talks. We're still talking about it. Business resources, I've been gathering for the past few months, and they will be posted to the website soon. These are just businesses who are supportive within this cannabis space. And then we have the option that we're going to put on our website that people, additional businesses can sign up if they would like to. That we can have a reference page for you. We have licensing learning sessions and workshops. We are trying to do them quarterly. I'm making that up. I have no idea. Does anybody know? My goodness. They're looking at me. Okay. I think it's quarterly. I think we're going to do one in person. We did some this summer, and I know a few of you came to the ones we had this summer. We had one in St. Louis, Jefferson City, Kansas City. So we try to go across the state. Our next thing is, it's really raining, isn't it? That's crazy. Well, then I can keep you longer until it stops. The next thing we have is actually next week. It's called a learning session. It's virtual. If you haven't heard anything about it, I don't know. I'm making this up again. Is it on the website? The learning session thing? Okay, I have no idea. All right, well, we can get you that information if you're like, Leslie, I don't know what you're talking about. I can find that information for you so that you can register and get online and listen to what they're talking about. I believe it's mostly metric stuff. So, I don't know. So I don't know if you're ready for all of the metric stuff, but I think that's what's coming up next. And then we're building relationships with colleges and universities, especially those ones that have cannabis education programs. It's a really great way to get younger people involved in the cannabis space. It's pretty amazing some of the amount of knowledge that there is already out there, and we're also encouraging research in different ways. And the last one is, how are we going to plug you into your own communities and other small businesses that are around you? That is super important. A community level connection. People need to know that you're part of that community and that you're supportive of other small businesses in that community. So I'm looking for ways to get you kind of connected into that. Other than that, because that doesn't sound like enough, we also have some different trainings that are coming up. We're actually going to be working with law enforcement, giving them a training about what DCR does and what's available within the law and how they can work with us and collaborate with us. I'm going to tell you, as microbusiness licensees, have a good relationship with the law enforcement that is around you in your local jurisdictions. You want to know their name and they want to know your name. It's a good resource for you.
And address.
So other than that, I'm going to leave up my, that's my contact info. You also have it and on that sheet that I left in your binder, I'm hoping, one of my goals today was that giving you final rule was helpful, that you had something to reference to. If you're like, yeah, I'm never going to look at that paper thing again, and I want to look at it online, it's available on the website as well. Article 14 is available on the website as well. If you really want to read the Constitution, it's there, and you can certainly dive into it as far as you want to. Other than that, I'm going to stop talking. I see some people like, no, don't stop talking. And we're going to bring up Jen and maybe Dawn and maybe Brittany. These are the folks that you're going to ask questions of. Any questions that you can think of is fair game. No, maybe not. No, I'm just kidding. That was too far away. And I think I have an extra. If you raise your hand, I'm going to run to you with a microphone, because I don't know if you noticed, but I couldn't hear what anybody said earlier when they were asking questions, so I had no idea. I got the answers, I just didn't get the question. I'm going to grab that.
Ricky, bitch.
The seed to sale tracking is a requirement of Article 14. So one of the bases of Article 14 is the illicit market and keeping marijuana from going out to the illegal market or the illicit market or coming in from the illicit market. And so the requirement for a track and trace system is in Article 14.
And are we allowed to take our own samples? I would think that just for marketing purposes, we ought to be able to try our own samples or something.
So a wholesaler is unable to try their own samples unless they would go through a dispensary. So you can sell give to a dispensary. You have to distribute to a dispensary, and then you would have you as an adult or medical would go and purchase from that dispensary to then be able to use those products. If you would take product and consume that product, that would be diversion. So yeah, you have to work through the process. It can be done, but it has to go through a dispensary to be dispensed to adult users or to patients. I'm sorry, what you're saying? Well, you wouldn't have to buy it. You would have to distribute it, and then you could have a partnership with them where you go and get it for free. But that does have to be tracked, through the track and trace system from seed to sale or distribution. And so, yeah, the expectation is to follow.
Let me know if you guys want to smoke any of your own weed. I'll hook you up.
Can we get a discount?
I thought there was a thing in there that said we could hand out samples.
She didn't hear you.
I thought there was a thing in there that said we could give out samples.
Okay, he's talking about giving out samples. Are you a wholesaler?
Wholesaler.
Okay, a wholesaler, if you look at our permitted activities guide, we have information in there about what license types can do what activities.
Okay.
And so a wholesaler, if they wanted to give out samples, would have to go through a dispensary facility. You, as a wholesaler, do not have the ability to give directly to a consumer or to a patient.
Or we can give it to a dispensary?
But you can give it to a dispensary, yes.
So if the dispensary was having like an event, like a food truck there, we could take samples and give them out?
To the dispensary.
Through metric.
So all marijuana has to be tracked from seed to sale.
Right.
And all sales or distribution of marijuana to a consumer or to a patient has to occur in the commenced space within your facility that is approved to have distribution or sale of marijuana. So there's a lot of rules within our security and commencement rules, a lot of different things that come into play. But if a wholesaler wants to give out samples, then they have to go through the dispensary. The dispensary has to sell it
in the location that they're approved to sell it into the appropriate, patient or consumer. They have to follow all of those rules. We do have, in our guidance online, we do talk about giveaways and how you could not have a facility agent go and purchase marijuana to give away at an event. There's more information in there. I don't want to, mislead anybody by not having it right in front of me. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about research and development that wholesalers can do?
Research and development the wholesalers can do in what aspect?
In terms of testing the product or like seeing their own internal research and development?
So testing their product. So we have our licensed testing facilities to do testing, but you're talking about, again, if you're doing research and development to try a product or see how consumers like it, they have to go through through those dispensaries.
And that's what comprehensives do?
Yes, that's what they should be doing. There's not, we do not have written in our rules at this point, it could be something that we look at in the future, but we don't have anything where a wholesaler can do that research and development outside of going through a dispensary. Yes.
Having our wholesale license doesn't affect our medical license, does it?
So having a wholesale license, does it impact your individual medical patient license? No, I don't think
Okay,
so.
there's all your answers. What do you mean? That's how you test it.
So,
Your medical
yes,
growth
you
is-
have to go through the right channels and get it from a dispensary. Yes.
But I just gave you the
So
loophole.
there's some rumors going around that there's going to be a delay in the round 3 licensing. Is that true? Can you guys speak to that? Due to, and the reason I heard is because there's rule changes, and that's really the nature of my question. So if that's not true, then we need to know that too.
We don't have that.
Yeah, no update at this time. The reason I don't know that answer is I have been on leave, so I haven't been connected, so.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Related to that, what's the national amount of 3 roads, because we have 7 details, and more get kicked out because that guy from Arizona sees a lot of it. Would there be a 4th route?
Yes.
We would have to consider
What would-
that. We haven't made any decisions at this point.
Wouldn't it make sense to roll over to kind of jumpstart the industry with all these waiting? I mean, we're putting a lot of things at the back end while the round ones are trying to get going, and I don't think there's gonna be enough there to support what they have. Is there a way to get around that? Because we're talking 2-3 years out. By the time this really goes into succession, and that's how I see it. I mean, it's a big damper on what the industry is.
Well, and there's no consistency in it. So like one person in a district got his didn't qualify, and then you instantly rolled it over to the next person, but then you didn't do that for like all the other ones. It seems like you would want everything to be straight across the board with no like, well, we'll do it this way one time and then we'll do it this way another time.
I'm not sure what specific one you're talking about. We can't really talk about specific licensees here. We would want to do that.
I'm just talking about in general.
We do have these discussions. We often have these discussions, not only with microbusinesses, but with all licensee operations. We often look at market information, market studies. That's something we'll be doing here soon, just to look at the whole market, not just for microbusinesses. So this is information that we do listen to. I will assure you, every time we look at anything, our first question is, how have we handled past situations that are similar? So we always do look at consistency, even though, someone may not understand why this one worked this way, this one worked that way. It's because we can't always say everything. That's just
Right.
kind of how these processes work. I will say, our DCR leadership is very active in considering possibilities and considering how to make this the best program. We do want the microbusiness program to be successful. This is an exciting program for all of us, not just for you. It's exciting for DCR. It's part of the Constitution. It's part of why we feel meetings like this are so important. It's important to get us all on the same page. It's important to make sure that you all have the best tools to set you up for success, those tools for compliance. It's our way of trying to help make sure that the industry is where it needs to be, the microbusiness operations are where it needs to be. And every time you provide this feedback to us, we listen. I do promise, we listen. We talk with Amy, we talk with Andrea, whoever will replace Andrea when she leaves. We will talk with her as well. There are also a lot of opportunities out there. I forgot, what is the name that we gave that Tara's group has? MCRC. What does that acronym stand for?
So we do have a collaborative that we've invited different licenses to apply around the state, and that includes regular licensees, and that also includes microbusiness. So we did try to represent each congressional district, as well as both wholesalers and dispensaries. I know that we're going to be asking for additional because we don't have enough on what we call our collaborative. We meet once a month and we discuss some major issues that are happening within the industry. We hear from those in the industry, their points of view. We can share our points of view about some things. So look for that from Tara McKinney, because I know she's going to need additional microbusiness licensees to be a part of that. And it's MCRC. I don't remember what that stands for, but it's an acronym that's really important. I just don't know what it stands for right now, but MCRC is what you'll see in her email announcement.
I bring that up because actually I was just reading meeting minutes from the last meeting while I was sitting over here on break. We have great input from licensees, so make sure we'll get that information out to you. It's on our intranet. Make sure that you look for those. You'll be able to look for who the representatives are for microbusiness, be able to talk to those microbusiness representatives so that they bring your concerns and share your concerns with DCR. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think one of the main concerns that we're all interested in, that both Scott and the other gentlemen were asking about or referring to, is the fact that you've got micro licenses staggered in a small three lottery program. So, and we're all relying on each other or dependent on each other to be able to get up and running. That's why nobody has gotten really up and going from the first group. Given us a 2-year limitation, by the time we get around to the third group, which some of them are going to be dependent on getting up and running too, we're not going to be able to get up and running before everybody's on the same page. So are you going to extend it or accept a variance without a charge that we can't open up because we're waiting for product, or we're waiting for the rest of our part of the industry to develop to be able to survive?
So we do have guidance online about our variances for operational deadline, and there is the rule for the 2-year requirement, so having that expectation. But like Amy talked about, we have variances, we look at the good cause, and so the expectation would be that licensees submit that variance. And right now, I wouldn't tell you the cost is waived, but it could be something that is discussed. The rule requires the $100 fee for our staff to work through it, but we look at each variance, and each variance is unique, and we try to determine if it should be granted, or if there was work on the licensee that they could have done and not gotten operational. So we look at all the circumstances. Yes.
Follow up on that. So you plan to be a little stricter with the wholesale licenses since everybody's
So he's asking how strict we will be for our wholesale licensees because our microbusiness dispensaries are reliant on those wholesalers to become operational. And so we treat all of our licensees equally, even though they are dependent. We would look at those unique circumstances for a wholesaler as we would a licensee and determine if a variance should be granted. So how much work are they doing? What is the holdup? What issues are they running into to determine if a variance should be granted? Licensees that are not compliant with that area of rule or any other area of rule are subject to notices of violation. They're subject to notices of pending suspension, which doesn't really impact them in that case, but pending revocation and revocation. So when licensees receive a license, they should be doing their best to become compliant. If they're running into challenges, they should be communicating that early with the department. They should be submitting a variance. They should be telling us what issues they're having and what they're doing to combat that. And then we try to look at those and determine, if it should be granted. So hopefully that helps you, but we understand that there are challenges. We did put out guidance, like I mentioned earlier, that's on our website. It was November last year, and tried to just give everyone information that we don't have the same challenges as we had during COVID and with building delays and things like that. And so, we're putting out our stance of this is, we find this important. When we went through the rule making process for when we went from 19 CSR 3095 to what we have now, 19 CSR 100-1, we talked about that operational deadline and we put it in our rule. And so we feel that it is important for our regular licensees to have 1 year and for our microbusiness licensees to have 2 years to have that expectation. We understand there's challenges and we will always listen to our licensees and try to work with you as much as we can.
You've had 65 revisions?
65 revisions.
Yeah, you said we were at 31 and now we're at 100.
So our medical rules were 19 CSR 3095. When we became our own division, that number went from that chapter and things to chapter 100.
Gotcha. I was like, dang, that's a lot of changes.
Any other questions? In metric, I'm not for sure what the context was, and if someone whoever. So your inventory, your statewide track and trace system is the metric is the state's official inventory record, and it is to be compliant, it has to be accurate at the end, every day. So at the end of every day, licensees should make sure there's no errors and no issues, that everything that is in that system is accurate, because that is a state official inventory record.
One that goes around, no, the devil's yeah. No, it's a new guy.
That means if you sell product that day, you should be verifying that the product that you sold or processed or transferred or whatever you did with that product, that the information that you entered into metric that day is accurate.
We're legal to do that. About mailing. Well.
Everyone's probably hoping nobody asks another question, so you have to stay longer.
UPS.
But we appreciate questions. If you have a question, your neighbor probably does as well, so feel free to ask. And if you don't want to ask here with everyone, feel free to reach out to compliance officer, business license services specialist, commencement inspections. We have our facility development team that Ashley, the ENC, is the supervisor for. So we really want to be a resource for you guys to be able to be operational within that time period. And like I mentioned earlier, it's very important that you guys read the rules and you know what rules are applicable to you, and to look at those definitions to know that as a micro business, what you are, you're a micro business, you're a licensee, you're a wholesaler, dispensary, a cultivator. There's a lot of different names in the rule that if you don't know where you are at in the rules, that you won't know that that rule
Maybe you could buy
applies to
some of
you. And
those
so
at Walmart.
we want to make sure that you guys have all those resources so you can be successful.
That was back when you used to do this. Oh, yeah.
Hey, great questions. I did want to add something about what Leslie said earlier. We do work to continually educate licensees.
No, not really.
This comes from, we've either had issues, licensees have had questions, they've, been unsure of something and asked for assistance. We will be doing a licensee learning series November 20th. This is going to be an online series. You can sign up, you can listen to this. There's 2 sessions, a morning session or an afternoon session. We occasionally do these as workshops, do in-person workshops. And we'll send those notices out from our program development unit. That's from that development email address that sent the save the dates out to you and all of the registration information
And
today.
then cup it as you're walking.
We really appreciate you all coming to this event today and listening to our information. I know that compliance can be kind of dry. And until you're actually in there doing it, sometimes it doesn't make sense. For me, I'm one of those people, I have to be in there doing it for it to make sense. So when you get in there and you're doing it, if it doesn't make sense, I hope that you've met many of the staff here and know who you can call, who you can reach out to, who you can talk to. And, like Brittany said, she just got back. Thank God she's back because I missed her. She's a wonderful resource. She's been with us for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow, you were way off.
Because time flies when you're having fun. But sometimes people are out for a while. So you've sent an email, you're not hearing back from them, contact their supervisor, their manager, contact me or Brittany. I hope that you have all those resources now. We've got a lot of information on our website. I do want to highlight Metric too and thank Metric for coming here. They've got some great training videos out there. I watch them regularly myself because Metric is still kind of a new tool to me. So going forward, if you need anything, please let us know. We're going to stick around until you guys head out of the building. So if you have any questions that you didn't want to ask, you want to meet someone, come see us. You get back to your facilities, you get back home, you think I should have asked this, email us, let us know. Any other questions before I let you go? Yes, sir.
I don't really have a question, but I wanted to tell everybody that I host a call for the microbusiness community on Mondays at 7 o'clock. So if you're not on those calls or you don't know about it, come see me and I'll make sure you get on the call, okay?
Did everyone hear that? Microbusiness phone call, 7 p.m. I do want to give one last shout out to our lead administrative assistants here, Carla, Clarissa, Ashley. They did a lot of work to make sure that they did a lot of work to bring all the cookies and snacks and make sure that we were well taken care of. So thank you, ladies. We really appreciate it. Everyone, have a safe trip home, and it was great meeting you.